So Andor Season 2 has finished, and we're here to review it in depth. We're doing a full-on breakdown of the 3 final episodes, and along the way, we're going to talk about things that you may have missed and answer a few questions here and there before we delve into Rogue One. So stay tuned here on Star Wars Chit-Chat for all of that and more. And so I am here with my co-host of Clone Wars Conversations. I'm here with Maff. We're here to talk about the finale, and stay tuned as well. Make sure you subscribe and all that jazz, because next week we are going to be tackling Rogue One. So very excited about that with Dave as well. He's going to be here for Rogue One because we cannot leave it. You know, this has been the finale of Andor, but it's not the final of Andor's story. And obviously it fully recontextualizes Rogue One, but we'll take a step back from that. Getting ahead of myself. We need to delve into the Andor episodes. So we've got the 3 final ones here, episodes 10, 11 and 12. We've got Make It Stop, Who Else Knows, and Jedha, Kyber, Erso. And they're very interesting episodes. The third one especially is quite different. It wasn't really what I expected. So we're gonna delve into all these, and let's not forget that it is 1 year before the Battle of Yavin. So 1 year before New Hope-ish. You know, the timelines, I think, as these episodes go on, get a bit more merged, and we don't know with Rogue One how long that takes, and A New Hope, and all that kind of stuff. But I'll be answering as many questions and providing as much context as I can throughout this journey. But I'm here with my guest Maff, of course, Clone Wars Conversations, as I already mentioned, where we've been going through all of the episodes of the Clone Wars, and we also went through every episode of Star Wars Rebels, and we've got plans to go through all the Tales of stuff, Bad Batch eventually, and we're going to rewatch all the movies as well. We've already done Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and we did a huge Revenge of the Sith commentary. So if you want to watch Revenge of the Sith and listen to myself, Maff, and our co-host Dave waffle through the whole thing, make sure you check that out on Star Wars Chit-Chat on any podcast app or on YouTube. So Maff, hello, good sir. Thank you for joining me on this momentous occasion. You've got the full view of all the Andor episodes now. So how have you found Season 2 compared to Season 1?
Well, hello there. It was funny because when we were discussing about who wants to do what, I was like, if I have a choice, can I do the last ones? Because I then get to kind of talk about all of them.
So it was a cheat, yeah. You got in there quick, you did well, perfect. But you know, you helped us out with Andor Season 1. You know, it was me and Jack who did that, and you stepped in and did a lot of those episodes. So I was like, you know, you get priority. You and Jack do.
Fair enough then. But when it first, I was excited for Season 2 because I thought Season 1 it was peak. It was so good, and again, going back and watching all Rebels and Clone Wars and things like that, it's highlighted and made Star Wars better. But I've loved this, and I was hoping if they even just get a smidgen of what Andor 1 was, then this Season 2 is going to be brilliant. And the first 3 I thought really good. The second ones I thought a bit so, but after that, it just kind of picked up, and is it as good as Season 1? I'm not sure.
It's different
but I think maybe that is because it's been delivered in 3-3-3-3, and I can't wait. I mean, I can't wait for weekend to go watch Rogue One, but I can't wait to actually go back and rewatch this at my own pace, because I think it might have been the second week when I watched them 3 kind of together. I was like nodding off a bit because I'd had a bit of a busy week, and it's like, but I want to watch them because they've all come out, but I don't want to get spoilers. But at the same point, I'm struggling now because it's like it's midnight and I want to go to bed. And but I think you did mention one of the things. It might have been better if they'd done 2 and then a 1 episode, 2 and a 1 episode, and that, or even just done. Maybe not have as many episodes and just make them a little bit longer, spread them out a bit. But it is what it is. I still think they're fantastic.
Yeah,
and I think one of the good things about it is, I will say I was a bit disappointed. I kind of thought of where we may have got some of the Ghost crew. And I thought, are we going to see Chopper? Would have been top tier if we'd have seen that. But after watching it, I'm kind of glad we didn't, because Clone Wars, some of the best episodes are the clones.
Yeah.
No Jedi, no Force powers, nothing like that. And I think that's what makes this really good, because yes, it's in a galaxy far, far away. It's, they talk about stuff that, Death Stars and things like that, which, is not something that we're going to see in our future. But then again, there are certain things in here that we can relate to.
Mm,
We're not going to go political on that, but and I think because it's a bit more grounded, you can kind of go, right, okay, I can pull little bits in, and it means a little bit more to you.
mm,
But one of the best things I like about this Andor, Cassian Andor,
hmm.
star of the show,
Yep.
and he isn't. And I think that is what's really good. And I play D&D, and Andor's like a bard.
Mm,
He's the kind of person who inspires people to do stuff, whether knowingly or not. And he gets people to do little bits and bobs here and there. And it's mentioned, I think, in the previous episodes, he's always where he needs to be. He's at the Force. We do see the Force messenger healer lady again in these episodes, but he's that glue that that kind of gets everything together, and I think they use him really well. He's not. I don't think the show would work if it was just follow Andor and everything that he's doing. I think because you've seen these pockets of resistance building together to build this rebellion, because that's what it is. It gives other characters time to breathe, and it, you feel more for the cause. Again, the more Star Wars that you take in, the more you actually start to enjoy and see other things and go, oh, that really works there. And, episode four, that actually fits better there than Rogue One. And even the prequels, I just feel that he's a star without having to be the star of the show. I think,
mm,
I think, the rebellion is the star of the show. And I think they have hit certain things just spot on. I mean, Mon in the last episode, when we see her on Yavin, it's like, whoa, she looks just like the original actress.
mm,
You know, there's no makeup there because she's not got that luxury anymore, and that I think they've just kind of gone right. What do we need to do, to make it feel like and get people's kind of juices flowing of, oh, yes, that's it. And, I'm excited again to get, I guarantee Disney this weekend, Rogue One will be like boom, 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 boom. People will be watching it. People will be watching the other Star Wars as well because of this and that. I remember when we finished season one thinking, I can't wait to watch Rogue One. And I thought, no, I'm going to hold off actually because season two's coming. Hopefully, I mean, all right, several years later. But it's fine because somehow I managed to find other Star Wars content to watch.
Yeah, we went through all of Clone Wars in between that time, didn't we? We did
Yeah,
Andor, and I was like, it's going to be a while for Andor season 2. Let's squeeze in. Well, I think we did Rebels reviewed, and then watched
I think
Ahsoka, and then
Rebels
after
came.
that, yeah, because I said after Andor, because you were so excited by Andor, and you watched some of the other live action stuff. I said, right, you need to watch Star Wars Rebels. That's what I always say to people. Is like, if you like Andor, you need to watch Star Wars Rebels. It doesn't quite have the same tone, but so many of the same beats. What you said, the rebellion being the star, so many elements of it, and especially its connections to Rogue One with Saw Gerrera, Mon Mothma, etc. It's like Rebels works so well with Andor, and then once you watch Rebels, if you haven't already seen Clone Wars, you're like, well, I want more of this. It's like, well, Clone Wars is the predecessor to Rebels, and then you watched all the Clone Wars, and then by that point, Andor season 2 came out. So you got a really good. You had Andor,
My timeline
Rebels,
has been
Ahsoka,
perfect.
yeah, Clone Wars, and then back to Andor. So you've basically had. I would say Ahsoka's probably not peak Star Wars. I enjoyed Ahsoka, but I think it is flawed. But I think with having Andor season 1, Rebels, Clone Wars, Andor season 2, those are, aside from probably the original trilogy, those are peak Star Wars. Like, I love the prequels. I'm a big prequels fan. I got the tattoos and everything. But like, really, the peak Star Wars for me has been Andor, Clone Wars, and Rebels. For me, it's still. I think Andor is probably maybe just about the top. I think Rebels for me is my favorite. But
I think the only thing I would have, the only problem I have with Andor is was talking with my 6-year-old, and he mentioned R2D2. I said, "Oh, forget R2D2. Chopper's where it is.
Yeah.
That's it's either Chopper or
AP5?
Yeah.
Or BT.
No.
BT1 for the comics.
BT1.
Yeah,
Yes.
the Alpha comics.
But I can't show him BT1 yet. I don't think
BT1 is brutal.
Yes. Chopper's that kind of. It's like when we had sassy Obi-Wan at times. Well, Chopper is sassy R2D2.
And R2D2 is already very sassy, so it's like...
But I mentioned, so I said, oh, we'll have to sit and watch Rebels. So I think I may see about introducing him to Rebels. When we go on this Star Wars journey with him, when we get to the point where Andor should be inserted, it's going to like...
especially with season 2. Well, season 2...
Especially... a scene in these.
Well, yeah, you've got, I think there's 3 primary scenes, I think, which are the most intense ones. I think there's from the first 3 like season 1 is mature, but apart from the torture stuff of Bix, I'd say you could probably get away with like a kid watching it for the most part. But when you get to season 2, you've got the assault scene with Bix, which is a lot. You've got the Gorman massacre, which is absolutely horrendous in a good way. And then, in this one, you've got so much death in these episodes.
Not a good way.
But in a good way, as in, like, it's amazing to watch, but it's horrendous to watch. Like, it's harrowing, but it's really good television,
Yeah.
And then in this, you've got so much. I mean, there's the bit which I always say is like, since watching this, I was like, in episode 11, when you've got the hallway scene and you have K2SO holding the body of Hert limply while the other ISB agent is shooting his corpse and it's flailing. I watched that. I was like, this is fucked. I was like, this is really cursed. This is legit. Like, I've got that like burned into my head. Like, I've seen messed up stuff. Okay. I've seen a lot of horrible, weird Japanese films and horror films. And I've seen, Game of Thrones and stuff like that. I've seen a lot of stuff that is like really unpleasant to watch, but seeing K2 holding that dude up being shot, I was like, this is so cursed. I was so glad we saw it, but I was like, this is horrendous.
I mean, I was tempted to have that as my picture as the background.
Well, yeah, because in the background you've got K2 as the...
Maybe not.
I love K2.
Especially when I kind of put it on the Hertz's head would just kind of be hanging at the side of mine. I thought, that doesn't look kind of right. So, but it's weird, isn't it? Hallway scenes and that seem to be kind of quite brutal. We have it in Daredevil several times. If you want to go back to Old Boy, there's a great
iconic movie.
Hallway kind of
yeah, it is the hallway scene, but it's not from the front, is it? It's from the side. But you're right, you've got the Daredevil scenes, you've got Old Boy. I mean, even in Star Wars, you've got the Vader Rogue One scene, which is the most brutal Vader scenes. You've got Luke Skywalker, although it's not brutal because it's only droids. That in Mandalorian is incredibly iconic.
Yes.
I think it's because hallways are claustrophobic, so the camera can't look away. So I think it's like very much field of vision kind of stuff.
The thing is, there's nowhere to go. And that. And I mean, in Daredevil, there's some bits when they kind of, it shows when he's fighting and they're kind of popping in and out of the doorways, but there's nowhere to hide. And that, in this, that hallway scene, they do tell Hertz to kind of tuck in, tells him to tuck in, but again, there's nowhere to really go as such. And then all of a sudden, hello. I think that's what kind of makes it more brutal. I mean, I'll wait till we get to that point because I've got.
Yeah, there's lots to talk about. I mean, I will say just there's a character called Mr. Bones, who I've mentioned I think before, and he's in the Aftermath trilogy of books. The Aftermath books are written by Chuck Wendig. It's some of the first Star Wars content that came out after the canon reset, and so Temmin Wexley, known as Snap Wexley. So Snap, he's got his Funko Pop up there. I don't know if people won't be able to see it. I'll grab him down in a minute. But Snap Wexley, he's one of my favourite sort of side characters in the sequel trilogy. But him, when he was a kid, he was Temmin, because he used to snap quite a lot. That's why his nickname Snap. But he basically repurposed a B-1 battle droid, the long-nosed droids from the prequels, and he repurposed it and kind of changed its personality matrix. And what it does, and he gave it loads of augmented weapons. And so it's got like a buzzsaw and like a knife, and like blasters and crazy stuff, and it hums and sings to itself while it's killing people. So he's painted it completely red. So he's like singing while slicing people up and laughing. And it's this droid doing it. And it's like, you mentioned about BT1 and there's 000 who are like overtly love the killing. Whereas, Mr. Bones he's not a psychopath in the sense of he loves the killing. He just wants to protect Temmin. And he has no concept of what's too much, but he's got such a weird disposition. He's just singing to himself while killing people, and it's so unnerving. And he's one of my absolute favorite characters, one of my favorite parts of the Aftermath trilogy. And he pops up in the Poe Dameron comics very briefly because the personality matrix got saved, so they install it into like a droid. And so you get a little clip of Mr. Bones that I love in the Dameron comics. But yeah, the droids. Megan says the droids in Star Wars are one of her favorite bits, and we all love R2.
Nearly
we love
all
Chopper. R2, K2, AP5. Like there's so many that are great. But yeah, we'll delve in. So we've got. I'll quickly say here as well a little plug for you, Maff, because we're talking a little bit before I forget. Maff, you're on 20th Century Geek. Talking Superman, the documentary. I was on that one as well. So we spoke about all of the Reeves Superman briefly, and then we spoke about the documentary, and we got quite intense and quite honest about those things. And again, you've also been on Back to the Filmography and also Clone Wars Conversations, and many more stuff to come from that. So all those details will be in the description. But we want to delve into the first episode here, which is Make It Stop. And so we've got... Make it stop is what Luthen says when he's in the flashbacks and he's in wartime. And so in brief, the plot here is Lonnie finds out about the Death Star. Luthen finds out and kills him. And then Dedra goes to the shop and speaks to Luthen there. Luthen gets found out and then he stabs himself with a Nautolan bleeder. And then you've got more Luthen flashbacks where you kind of show him meeting Kleya and essentially saving her and their kind of early beginnings. And then you've got more of Dedra's obsession with Luthen. Then you've got Luthen in the hospital, and then you've got Kleya, who essentially goes into the hospital, infiltrates it, and then takes off Luthen's life support, and that's the end of him. And it's quite a isolated story, really. It's really the first chapter and the last chapter of Luthen's life. And so he used to be called Lear, Lear, and his name is Luthen Rael now, so obviously he flips his name backwards, which is like a thing of, he's flipped himself, he's changed himself. So what did you think of this episode as a whole? Was there anything that stood out to you that you wanted to discuss specifically?
Once it finished, I kind of thought, have they done him dirty? And that is the kind of... But I suppose he took himself out in his own way. I do question maybe he should have cut his tongue out or something like that, because the thing is, he obviously stabbed himself in the chest or that area. Actually, quickly, that knife, that I believe, Nautolan, that's Fisto's race, isn't it?
Yes, Kit Fisto.
Could that have been one of his, maybe?
They said it was over 600 years old, and it seemed to be 6 centuries years old, and they believe it was ritualistic, so they don't know.
Right.
But I doubt it was actually Kit Fisto's, especially because his sunny disposition in the Clone Wars, and Jedi don't really have knives very often. There's the odd one that does, but generally they don't. But I think it was just a nice connection because the Nautolan... It's weird, really, because there's very few species that are very commonly Jedi. Like, we don't know about the species that Yoda, Yaddle, and Grogu are, because the only 3 of them we've ever seen are all Jedi or strongly Force sensitive. Mm-hmm. But outside of that, we generally, when we see someone who's a Jedi, often you see way more characters of that species that aren't Jedi. It's not that common for species to be Jedi. So I would probably say it's not Kit Fisto, but you don't know. It's like the mask there's in there, the Keldor breathing mask.
Cocoon's mask.
Yeah, and it's like, and it's like all Keldor species had to wear those masks on planets with oxygen. And there was a Keldor Jedi in Acolyte that got killed by the Stranger in the Day-Night episode. And then there have been other Keldor characters that are few and far between that aren't Jedi, but again, it doesn't say it is or isn't. So
it's that kind of Easter egg of people go, oh, that could be. It's like there is the
Calicori.
Yeah, and that they're in the back of the shop.
Yes, there are 2 of them. Yeah. There's a metal one and there's a wooden one, but that's almost
it's a little tiny wouldn't, but yeah.
That's not, I would say that's not Hera's, because Hera's one was at her home in Rebels, then Thrawn takes it, and then Hera gets it back, I think, if memory serves. So that wouldn't have been hers specifically, but
no, but
I don't know whose it could have been.
It's that nod to
yes.
They've got something there that people go, oh, I recognise what that.
100%.
Which that's nice. It is same as I think season 1. I noticed the hand gestures, the
mural.
From the mural.
Yeah, that's, you can see that in the background still in season 2, where Luthen dies. Yeah, it's the wall that we see in Rebels in the World Between Worlds episode, where it's got the father, the son, and the sister, and it's got the fist and the open hand, and it's like, I don't think it's meant to be the one we saw in Rebels specifically, especially not in season 1 because it was before that time. But it's like, well, those paintings were all over the galaxy in theory. So yeah, I love it. I love seeing like Padme's headdress, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure it was actually Padme's, but you don't know. It could have just been a Naboo.
I think
traditional one.
There's a what race is Jar Jar?
Gungan.
Gungan. There's a Gungan skull.
Yeah. There's Gungan skull and shield.
Unfortunately, I don't think it's
not.
Jar Jar.
He's alive. He's alive in the Aftermath trilogy.
Yeah. Sorry, Dave.
He's alive in the Aftermath trilogy, which is obviously what I mentioned, which I adore that trilogy of Mr. Bones. He is, after Return of the Jedi, a year or year and a half after Return of the Jedi, he's still alive on the streets of Naboo. He's like a street clown that he like performs, and like kids like him, but all the adults hate him. So he is alive, which is fine. But yeah, there's a lot of...
Soon, Darth Binkers will come.
Well, he's in Fortnite now, or Darth Jar Jar, they call it. They missed a trick calling him Darth Binkers. But sorry, with Luthen, so you have mixed feelings about him taking his own life.
Because well, no, him taking his own life. The thing is, he was destroying the equipment, and then he kind of looked for him. He went and answered the door. Finish what you're doing. You know they're coming in.
Yeah.
And I mean, that cat and mouse thing that they had for like 30 seconds, and that I felt that could have probably gone on a little bit more, kind of toying with each other, but I just feel that it was right to kill himself off, because he knew that was probably going to be the way it was going to go. I think that's why he told Kleya to go, and he would stay to deal with it, because if they did come in, it's him that gets caught. But I just feel that if you're gonna do it yourself, do it right. In the neck or something like that. Make sure that we've seen people come back from blaster shots, from lightsaber shots, things like that. You're going a bit of Bacta and you're fine. I get the fact that the pain of probably killing himself would be extreme, but just think what the torture's going to be like. If they keep you alive.
I think he was aiming to kill himself. I mean, as soon as he was taken off the ventilator from when Kleya disconnected him, he did die pretty much straight away.
Yes.
So I think he did. The area he got, it looks like it was kind of his heart and his lungs. But I think the thing is with Star Wars is it's so almost, if someone wants to keep you alive, it's quite hard to die. Because if you think like slitting your own throat, there are characters in, there's some in the High Republic, and there's some elsewhere where they have like new throats.
Right.
Because as long as they don't sever the spine, you can have like your windpipe in Star Wars seems to be quite, not easy, but like...
Yeah, I mean, you've got a guy walking around who's pretty much burnt to crisp and missing most of his limbs.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, all of his limbs. He hasn't got any of them. And as you say, his skin's burnt, his lungs are gone.
I mean, that bit there, I kind of thought, really? I'm not sure about this, but I think it pays off with the fact that Kleya has to go in there and she has to finish the job, and she's kind of very much on mission until the point when she turns it off, and then you see that tear and you kind of think, oh gosh, that's hard. That's that point when you know that she knows what she has to do is right, and what he would want, but still, and I think it pays off then, because then it adds a bit more to it. But yeah, I was a little bit thought, would have been cool if he'd have gone out in a blaze of glory, but that's it. Luthen's had his points. I mean, when he lightsaber ships a lot of ships, that is cool.
When he lasers them in season 1, yeah.
but that's not really what he's about. He's more the kind of
Cloak and dagger.
yeah, so in a way, going out in a blaze of glory probably don't fit him. This probably does fit him better. It's his own terms and that. So, yeah, I was a bit on fence at first, but as the episode went on, I kind of thought, yeah, I would like to go back to Lonnie.
Do it.
When Lonnie comes to him and he's like, there's a thing he says with Kleya. He says, she says, "Don't go unless it's perfect," and it says, "With you, sort up all the perfects." So he knows that he has to go and he has to find out. And when he's talking to Lonnie, and Lonnie's like, "I've got wife and child. We need getting off. We need safe passage, and that you promised us." And they have that kind of to and fro and what have you. And he gets the information out about the Death Star and all this and all that. And then you have that shot afterwards of Lonnie just slumped on the bench, and it's like, oh. And I kind of thought, you bastard. But then I thought, realistically, what Luthen at this point is a year on, he's stayed behind. It's very obvious it's just them two now. They don't have the funds, they don't have the rebellion as such behind them to kind of they're having to work themselves to get out of there. He can't extract Lonnie and his family. No. And then Lonnie's a loose end. So well, realistically,
if they got captured, you think if Lonnie was with Luthen in the shop with Jedha, Luthen wouldn't have been able to kill them both.
No.
There'd been no chance. And then all that happened is Lonnie's family would have suffered. So although it's a brutal act, I think Lonnie's family probably, one would hope, the Empire didn't take vengeance on them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I suppose in a way you could, that they are aware that Lonnie has gone through as Jedha on her computer and what have you. But you kind of think hopefully his family don't. I mean, I think the family's already been taken into hiding.
Yeah, he says they're already hidden away. So it's like, well, I don't think the Empire's pretty ruthless, but I don't think the Empire would go after Lonnie's family.
So hopefully kind of taking him off the board means that his family does have a chance. I mean, it's brutal.
Yeah.
Having a wife and a child who's not going to know the father. Maybe we'll come back to that later on.
Yeah, I can't imagine if Star Wars ever tackling that subject.
but yeah, it's. I kind of thought, oh, well, why have you killed him? But I'm thinking, yeah, because really at this point, you guys, you've got a shop full of antiques there, which I'm sure you could sell for a bomb. But to be fair, you are on your bare bones, and that, and he's ready to kind of just. Technically, that's just a front for him. And that.
Yeah, and Lonnie's a very recognisable face in the Empire. Like if Lonnie got seen anywhere, it'd be very difficult to hide him. Yeah. Whereas Luthen, before Jedha shows up, wasn't necessarily on the hit list. I thought Lonnie stuff. I was like, oh, that's sad. But I was like, actually, it does make sense. But I did think the same about what you said earlier with Luthen, which is like when he burned the panel sort of thing and destroyed all the contacts. I was a bit like you see Jedha coming in. Surely you know what's going to happen at this point. I would have, done a bit more. I thought he was, when you said about the Blaze of Glory, I thought he was going to, what he'd set off was kind of like a bomb detonation. Yeah. And him and Jedha were going to kind of take each other. But I think that what that leads to is, I'm glad it didn't happen because Dedra's interactions with Krennic and then where she ends up is amazing. Like, I want to go back to Kleya. We'll go to Kleya in a minute, but let's focus on Jedha as we've kind of gone through this. So, Jedha, going at the end, she ends up in Narkina 5, where Andor obviously was, which is amazing. Yes. But those conversations with Krennic, Ben Mendelsohn isn't in season 2 a huge amount, but every scene he's in, he absolutely steals it. He's incredible. So I wonder what you think about the Jedha scenes and her being with Krennic and being interrogated and stuff, how you kind of felt about those.
That presence that he has when he walks in and that, he's not Vader. He's not going to force choke you, but the bit when he just puts his finger on top of her head and kind of pushes down a bit, even I sat there and I kind of, went
into the film
a little bit and it's like, oh, God. But then the other bit as well, when he grabs her by the face and he says, we don't even need you. And it's like, oh God, right, yeah, you're a nothing to him. But all he was on about is who knows? Who knows about the Death Star? He don't give a shit about access. He don't give a shit about anything else. It's who knows about the Death Star? Because at this point, I think in the last episode we realised that he's close to being complete.
I think it's a few weeks. I think by the end episode. So
I
I'd
think
say
he says I need a few more days. It's
yeah,
Parsons like it should be up and running.
yeah,
Basically, do your job.
100%, yeah.
And that, and I think in that interaction with Partizan, you can kind of see that's a bit where he falters a bit because it's not up and running. And he kind of thought, oh, shit, yeah, it should be up and running, but it's not.
Because he says, like, what are you talking? And I love, like, when Partagaz and Krennic talk, that's one of my highlights of these 3 episodes. I love the Imperials arguing with each other. I think it's so good. It's very, like, the dialogue is so strong, the acting is so good, but literally when he's like, you should have had it finished by now. If you did, we wouldn't be in this mess. And he's like, what are you talking? Because obviously Tarkin is constantly on his back because the only person above Krennic outside of Vader and the Emperor realistically is Tarkin, because Tarkin is the highest you can be in the Empire outside of Palpatine and Vader. Everyone else is below him. And it even says in one of the episodes, like, Wolf Yularen only found out about the Death Star literally within the few days of this. And I thought Yularen was in the know, but he's not at all.
No one needs to know. That's the thing. It's so top secret. And that, you know, I mean, I suppose the only people who actually know is them who's putting it together.
Well, even a lot of them don't fully know.
And that, you know, I mean, they're aware they're probably just building a space base. They're not aware of the actual power behind it, of what it's going to be. And that, no, I suppose to be fair, until they test it, it's still all theory. And that, you know, but
I suspect that's why the laser gets put in last, or the dish for it, because I assume, like, of the Death Star itself, most of it, I think, is like living quarters and ways for people to live. And there's like energy stuff that goes through it that I think they would argue, oh yeah, this energy is just to power the base, just to make sure it's self-sufficient.
I mean, it's not a moon. It's no moon. But it's a giant power plant. It's got to sustain life. And that. So it kind of makes sense that, you know, and people will be, it'd be like that being that Iron Man, where the plans you put more together, you see the Iron Man suit, but in parts, it's like, oh, there's that and that and that. You know, people will have that. I think, to go back to Dedra, I think the brutal thing is when she's in that Kina 5, and I'm thinking, you're building the Death Star still, because that's what they'll be doing. And because that's what they were doing before. I mean, it's obviously there's been the prison break. I mean, we don't know what's happened afterwards. It's you know, but
probably locked down. It's probably even less likely anyone's ever going to get out.
Well, yeah, you know, I'm glad we never got Andy Serkis's character.
Like Kino Loy.
Yeah, I'm glad there were no kind of, oh look, he's here, or you know, it pops out of one of the starfighters and you're like, hey, Andor.
I think if Dave Filoni made this show, then Kino Loy would have popped up. Yes, yeah.
But that's the thing. It's very grounded to a certain degree, you know, and it leaves a lot of questions. But to be fair, there should be a lot of questions. There should be kind of, well, what about this? Well, who knows? Could be another story. Who knows? And that you don't always know everything. And that I know with the viewer we can kind of see from the outside to a certain degree, but there's still kind of, it's good to kind of, we can have these discussions and maybe come up with different theories on actually what's going to happen next. And that, but you know, yeah, that with Jedha, I do kind of feel that, you know, she's been unfortunate. She's really been dealt a shitty hand. You know, I mean, because she helps hers, and that when hers kind of comes to seeing, she's like, you know, look, but track frequencies, and that it's like, oh right,
yeah. When Hurt comes to her, it is interesting interaction, but I think it's kind of a self-preservation because she doesn't want to help him, and then he's like, well, I can put in a good word if it works out. But I think with Dedra, like, I think at points you're like, in season 1, it's, she's an unpleasant person. She's kind of just trying to do the best. But I think once you see what happens with the Gorman massacre, and you know that she was really just doing that just to go up in the Empire. Because when Cyril, like Cyril is, he's a bit of he's an annoying character. We've all met people like Cyril in our lives, but he's quite sycophantic. But it's really that when you see him, especially when he interacts with Dedra, he genuinely does want the right thing to do. And like, when you realise, because I'd kind of half forgotten, in season 1, when Andor and Cyril first kind of clash, it's because Andor is off doing his own mission. A couple of basically drunk police officers corner him in an alleyway when he's doing dodgy stuff, and he kills them both. You know, he shoots one of them because they pull a gun on him, and then he kills the other one who begs for his life. And so he kills an officer of the law. It's a pre-more authority personnel. So he shoots him cold blood when he's begging for his life, and Cyril Khan clocks onto that. And so Cyril the whole time is like, I want to kill Andor because he's representing disorder, and I just want to follow the system. And as soon as Cyril goes, oh, the Empire's not actually in it trying to create order and for people's best interests. The Empire's got its own thing and is willing to sacrifice its own citizens just for this gain of something. That's when Cyril loses it and goes, I can't be a part of this. But Dedra doesn't. She has the bit of crisis of faith when she's talking to Partagaz in the prior arcs, and she's like, do we really need to do this? And he's like, calm yourself down. You can do this. Go ahead. Yes, we have to do all these things. And she kind of talks her way into it, even though obviously at the end she's very distressed about Cyril and also about the massacre. But like, she at the end of the day can live with herself with it, and Cyril can't. So I'm like, yeah, I understand, but I feel like, you know, it links to fascism, isn't it? It's like Cyril was almost, if we compare it to the Nazis and the Holocaust and stuff, Cyril was almost someone who went into the Nazis and was like, yeah, a lot of this stuff is awful, and us, you know, doing all the stuff to the Jews was terrible, but then finding out they're actually gassing them, that would be when Cyril's like, this is too much. This is no longer about order. But Dedra would be the kind of person who would be making the gas chambers more efficient. And she that's who she is. Yeah. And she would have a degree of regret, but not like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. She's all in it for, I want to go up and up and up in the Empire. She would be where Krennic is if she had her way.
She's her own worst enemy, because if she'd have gone in, it's like this, she went in without backup, without telling anyone. And the reason she's done that, I think, is because she goes in and she captures Luthen, and it's like, got him, I did it. Then she gets her name out there. Otherwise, if she reports that, then whether it's Parson or Krennic, they come in and take all the glory, and then she's just forgotten about again. And you don't see very many women in her position. So it's very much the kind of thing of, well, I have to do this. And she's now blinded by common sense to make them right choices, because she's just like, this is it. This is the mission. There is nothing else. And that unfortunately is a downfall. If she'd have just even if she'd gone to Hurst and said, look, because she says in the previous ones, I'm not bothered about the glory, I just want him done. I want him caught. But then in this end, she's gone past that now, and she just wants to be the one to bring him in. Again, her ego kind of got the best of her. And if she'd have just gone and said, look, found him, let's go in. You know, again, why going by yourself? Walking, stunned you.
Why even talk to him? It's because you want to kind of brag to him. Whereas if, like, literally, if a few stormtroopers just kind of ran in and just shot him with a stun thing, there wouldn't be, you know, and then it wouldn't be the thing. That's exactly it. And also, when she allegedly got sent like an email she shouldn't have got, and then went through the files and then started digging in more stuff. And he's like, how do you know about Galen Erso? How do you know about this? How do you know about that? And it's literally just because she essentially was looking for stuff to do with Andor, allegedly. Yeah. But also she wanted to know these things. She wants to be in the know. She wants to be that kind of person who is indispensable to a degree where she's willing to potentially shoot herself in the foot to get to that point, just because she's like, no, I'm valuable. I'm invaluable. And it is, you say earlier on, like, as soon as Krennic says, we don't need you, and points out, actually, you think you're quite high up in the Empire, you really mean nothing.
Well, that's because one of the earlier episodes, he kind of pulls her aside and says, give me your thoughts, because you don't agree with this. So she does. And I think at that point, she probably has a bit of false hope of, oh, he actually values what I say. and that. So maybe she's kind of built it up the fact that she can talk herself out of this, and she can kind of, and that bit when he gets out of her by the face, he says, "We don't need you." It's like, yeah, you're nothing to him. You're just a cog in the machine. He does not care. All he's bothered about is his mission, and to be fair, he wants to outdo Tarkin.
Oh yeah, well, it's all the Empire is all kind of self-eating and stuff, and Palpatine actually kind of allows that to happen. He almost reinforces it because he's like, yeah, if you're stepping on someone else to achieve results, that's good. I don't care. And that's really, there's the Thrawn trilogy, the canon Thrawn trilogy by Timothy Zahn, because there's 3 Thrawn trilogies. There's it's the Empire one, which is in Legends, which is great, set after Return of the Jedi and stuff. Then there's the Thrawn trilogy, which is Thrawn Alliances, and Thrawn Treason, which is the first canon Thrawn trilogy. And then there's the Chiss Ascendancy trilogy, which is set like a decade or 2 prior, and that's all that really complicated political stuff to do with the Chiss, which I haven't personally read all those. The 3rd audiobook of that is nearly 24 hours long, so I'm like, oh, we'll listen to that at some point. But with Thrawn Alliances and Treason, Thrawn Treason, the 3rd in the trilogy, it's really good because it's set, you know, in Star Wars Rebels, around season 3, Thrawn goes away for a few episodes and he lets Governor Price kind of control stuff. That's when, spoiler alert for Rebels, a major character dies in a big explosion. When that happens, because of Price's stupid decision, that's because Thrawn is away. Yeah. The reason Thrawn's away is he's away for like a few weeks or like a month or 2 is because essentially his TIE Defender project, they're going to pull funding from it and give it to Krennic to fund the Death Star. And so he basically like has an argument with Krennic in loose terms and essentially has to agree to go off and do this mission to try and get on the Emperor's good side and to kind of try and get on Krennic's good side in an effort to try and help his TIE Defender program. But then when he goes away, so much damage gets done, and also he kind of gets tricked into going away and being out the picture. Then Krennic just kind of gets his way while Thrawn's gone and then comes back. And it's all about that. It's all about politically maneuvering around people. There's points where Thrawn is trying to outmaneuver this person, and then he does a favor for Tarkin. So Tarkin allows Thrawn to outmaneuver this other Grand Moff. And all these Grand Moffs... Cause that's
scratch my back. I mean,
yeah,
you say it's like I think it's 2015 run of Vader. Palpatine kind of basically has replacements for Vader.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And he ends up going up and killing them all.
Yeah.
So, you know, but Palpatine's like, I mean, at the end of it, Palpatine's like, oh, good, yes, you beat my trap, kind of thing. It's like, no. If any of them had won and killed Vader, you'd be like, oh yes, you're my number one. He didn't care.
No.
You're just a pawn, and whoever's going to get the results from him, be the best of the best. That's what he wants. There's no loyalty, and that Vader is just because he's so good at what he does, and that he's still there. But as soon as anyone else could dethrone him, they would do. And Palpatine like, oh yes, come on, you be my number one now, and that's very much how the Empire kind of runs. It's like, whoever is the best at the job at the time, you're in there. But yeah,
it's one of the ways, because if you need to have everyone fighting each other, because then they can't focus on you at the top.
Yeah.
Palpatine. And he's like, and the thing is, at the end of the day, if someone does try and confront Palpatine, he can just not just kill them with his power of the Empire, but he can literally physically. He's one of the most powerful Force users ever. So if you actually get locked in a room with him and you try and shoot him, he'll just murder you, like flat out.
Yes, I mean, they're not aware of the true power. But the thing is, like you said, I mean, if they all kind of tried to work together, I mean, they still probably wouldn't have a chance, but still. But the thing is, if at any point they realise, actually, do you know what? If we worked together, we could have overthrown him and made things better. He doesn't want that.
No.
He wants to have that chaos. It works better for them.
100%, yeah.
And even if you do try to work together, you end up like the Jedi who are bloody useless.
Yeah, well, you touched on something quite interesting there, which is something I want to mention, which is one of the parallels I noticed. This is going right to the end now, but one of the parallels I noticed, which was with the Rebellion Alliance, is that is the same thing that happened with the Jedi Council, and it's the same thing that happens with the New Republic in the sequel trilogy. And it's more so behind the scenes before the sequel trilogy happens. It's sort of, there's a book, Bloodlines, which is really good, Claudia Gray's Bloodline, and it's all about like Leia maneuvering. I think it's about 10 years before Force Awakens. Has all these political maneuverings about she's realizing there's something going on. She doesn't know it yet, but it's the First Order. And she's trying to organize and work out what's happening. But literally all of the New Republic are like, no, don't worry about it. We don't need an army. We don't need this. And we see it a bit in the Mandoverse where like all the military is being stripped back. And like when people are like, no, the Empire, there's Imperial Remnant. You need to go fight them. They're like, nah, don't worry about it. We're all fine. We're comfy here. A lot of what the Rebellion Alliance was doing in this last episode where they're kind of like squabbling. And Andor's like, here's the thing. It's a big problem. You need to sort it out. And then they're like, well, I don't believe you. Well, I don't know about that. Well, do we want to do this? It's a bit of a big risk. And it's like, the Jedi did that in the prequels. The New Republic do that in the sequels. The Rebel Alliance do it here. And only because Andor and Jyn Erso go against orders and have friends in the rebellion and loads of other things that kind of went against them is the only way they got the information from Scarif and Rogue One. So it's kind of that idea where obviously you need due process in a lot of ways, but a lot of the good guys, air quotes, they get bogged down by the process and bureaucracy and their confidence in themselves to some respect. Like, the Empire wouldn't create a planet-killing weapon. That would be foolish. Or in the New Republic, the First Order hasn't come back. Obviously not. We're at peace. And the Jedi are like, yeah, well, there's something going on, but we're still in control. Like, all these ideas, it all get bogged down. And I think it's a very clear repetition and very clearly and evidently done of being like, you can't get too comfortable when you're the good guys. Being good isn't enough, and you can't just follow the exact same process over and over because it won't always save you.
No, the thing is, I mean, I did find it interesting because I always see Mon as the leader of the rebellion, but
yeah,
it felt like Rael was the one who was calling the shots in this. And I thought, well, I don't know how I feel about that because
you have to think though, she's not even in the original trilogy. She doesn't even show up until Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, true.
Which I always kept thinking she was. I thought genuinely until the other week, and I looked it up. I genuinely was certain that Mon Mothma was in A New Hope. And I've seen that from so many times, but it's not. She's only in Return of the Jedi, and obviously Bale's not in any of them.
On Hoth, yeah, they're on Hoth, aren't they?
No, she's not even in Hoth. No,
shit, I thought she was on Hoth on the.
Nope. This is what I mean. Everyone's got the Mandela effect of how important Mothma is. She's only in like one scene, and it's when she's talking about the Death Star 2 in Return of the Jedi. That's the only scene she's in.
Right.
Apart, she might be in like right at the very end at points, but I think that's.
So I suppose she's like like Darth Maul. Darth Maul's in a short scene and then became this big thing. I suppose Mon Mothma, because of Andor, has now become this big thing as well.
Well, that's why
weird, that is.
Yeah, because that's why in the Clone Wars she's not really in it much, and I don't remember if she has like one or two speaking lines in the Clone Wars. In Revenge of the Sith, the normal cut, she has no speaking lines, but in the deleted scenes, she has a few more lines, but not a huge amount. And then in Rogue One, she has like 2 or 3 lines, I think, maybe a few. No, I think she has a few more than that, but she's not in it much.
I think she's only like 3 episodes of Rebels.
Yeah, 5. Yeah. She's in 5 episodes of Rebels, 5. But I think she's in 5, but I think she only has speaking roles in a couple of them. But she's still voiced by Genevieve O'Reilly. But in Clone Wars, she's not voiced by Genevieve, I don't think. But she's still played by her in Revenge of the Sith. But until Andor, she's not really in it like that much. She's important, and a lot of people remember her from Return of the Jedi. I've always known who Mon Mothma is, but I thought she was in it more. But she's not really in it that much, and that's the weird thing. Is like we all have this idea of who controls the rebellion, but I think it's because we see it through the lens of Luke Skywalker. And in the original trilogy, when it's actually Bail and Mon sort of in the early days after the Empire, because they were seeing what was happening with what the Republic had become, they started to fund it because they had the money and the resources and stuff. So they started to fund it and steadily, quietly organise little allocation of resources here, little allocation of resources there, just little bits so no one notices anything while we can figure out kind of what to do with all this. And that's what Bail and Mon Mothma kind of started. But Luthen was the one really taking action and taking fighting and really gathering people to the side. So it's kind of like Bail and Mon were kind of increasing resources, while Luthen was almost getting people and indoctrinating them and radicalizing them, which is also what Saw Gerrera was doing. So you've kind of got the
slightly different way.
with the Rhydonian, but you've kind of got the 4 pillars of the rebellion, which is the 2 on the front lines fighting, which is Luthen and Saw, and indoctrinating people and radicalizing them, and then Mon Mothma and Bail trying to work in the Empire, in the political side, and failing most times, but allocating the resources quietly for that. And that's how they all kind of came up together and formed what eventually becomes the Rebel Alliance. But yeah, it's weird when you realise Andor shows how political it is, but I think because in New Hope, it's like, is the Death Star. Here's this big thing we all agree we absolutely have to destroy. There's no argument or due cause. And then, because it's 3 years between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, there's a lot of comics about it. Hope Dies is the one I keep quoting to people because General Draven and General Jedha both get killed in that. When you get to Empire Strikes Back, they're the little base on Hoth, and there's not as many people. And then when you get to Return of the Jedi, they've got more people. They've kind of got some more people again. But by that point, most of the rebel leaders are kind of gone. So you've kind of just got Leia left. And Leia, if you think about it, in the original trilogy, she makes most of the decisions for the rebellion. Well, she's Bael's daughter. She wouldn't have that clout if Bael didn't already have that. So in hindsight, it does kind of make sense. But I haven't really thought about that.
I suppose it's probably because the thing is, certain times when you think of Bael, you think, well, Bael got killed. He was on
Alderaan
when it blew up. So you kind of think, oh, right, yeah, we know Bael, but okay. Didn't turn out well for him. No. So I suppose seeing more of an active version of him, and that, and again, it's behind the scenes. You don't exactly know who's pulling the strings and who's actually doing what's what. What did you think of the flashback?
What with Luthen?
I've because Andor's finished, and that I know we're going to watch Rogue One, but that's already been done. We're not really going to get to see these characters. I would love to see a little comic of what happened. I know they kind of briefly kind of show little bits of him and Kleya together, but I'd love to know because what was he, a rebellion? Was he on the end? Because he's fighting in an army of sorts, and that because he's a sergeant and he gets called and then he can. But I'd love to see more of that backstory of where he came from. I mean, again, there's a scene in there when they're on Naboo, to do the bombing, but also there's a group of prisoners who were just lined up and just executed, and it's like, oh God! And one of them's he's a teenager, but he's still a young lad. You know, again, it kind of shows you up to a certain degree and then kind of cuts away, but you hear the blaster fires and that. And again, this is why I kind of say I don't think I could show my little list.
I wouldn't. No, it's a more mature.
What happened? Don't worry about it, son.
Yeah, don't worry. The rebellion's all fun and yay and woohoos and blowing up Death Stars. Don't worry about the horrendous.
They're playing laser tag. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
Yeah. I think so. I agree completely. I think a comic series would be good, but I think I'd probably prefer a book. I would love a book on Kleya, just like focusing on Kleya.
Yeah.
But because Luthen's such a major part of her life, you get to see stuff about him. And kind of like I would like her to be the main point of view character. I'd like a book which is like 70% Kleya, 20% Luthen, then 10% normally like a random antagonist.
I think it shows an awful lot more in season 2 that I think the Luthen is kind of picking things. I think Kleya's the one who's kind of driving a lot forward.
Yeah.
She's more intelligent than people give her credit for.
Oh yeah, when you see her, like the brilliance of when they think it's 3 people infiltrating the hospital, it's just her.
Yeah.
People say, I saw someone online post it like
John Wick there, isn't she?
Oh, she's amazing. And I think, and you know, shout out to Jack as well, obviously, who was on the first batch of Andor episodes and obviously did a lot of Andor season 1 discussions. Jack literally has said Kleya is his favorite character in Andor, and like she is amazing. And when they think that it's 3 people and she goes in, and I saw someone online say, if it had been Kleya who'd been captured on the Death Star instead of Princess Leia, she would have single-handedly blown up the Death Star. Which, I don't know if that would have been the case, but she would have given it a good fight. Like, she is so resourceful. She's like
an onion. There's so many different layers to her, isn't there? I mean, the thing is, you kind of see she's so adaptable, and I think the problem is, I mean, I'm glad she didn't die,
100%.
but there again, it's like, what happened to her next? Because she's not in Rogue One, is she?
No.
So it's like, what happens next? Does she just retire?
The same as Vel. Like, Vel's not in Rogue One.
Yeah, true.
I think what I would love, I think, if I could control Lucasfilm, I'm sure this is already in the works and stuff, but if I had control over what Lucasfilm Publishing did, so I'm putting this out there, Lucasfilm Publishing, please listen to me. I love Lucas. I love the High Republic. I love democracy. I love all that stuff. But I've read every single Marvel canon comic, bar a couple that came in the last few months. I've read like 60-something% of all the novels that are canon. For me, if I could choose, I would say probably Beth Revis or Delilah S. Dawson writes a Kleya novel. That would be my thing for Luthen and Kleya, but mainly about Kleya. And then one of the comic writers, I mean, there's so many comic writers who are amazing, but Charles Soule is amazing, so is Cavan Scott. Any of the High Republic people, I would love them to write this. But like a collection of stories, or even you could do different writers and different authors each time, but like stories of the rebellion and have like 10 issues. And what it does is it kind of spans from Andor to Return of the Jedi, and we see each one focus on a different character, or maybe there's lots of short stories in between in them across different eras, and it's almost like maybe 10 years of the rebellion, and we get to see there's a little Vel story here, and then there's a Kleya story here, and then there's a Vel story here, and then there's bits and pieces. I would love, because I think because the rebellion, especially around Andor, sort of the finale episodes and like a year before, once Mon Mothma gets to Yavin, and there's a lot more on Yavin. I think from there to the end of Return of the Jedi, there are so many missions going on, so many stories. I mean, Wilmon, he's still alive. There's so many things and threads that are going on. I'd love just to see bits and pieces of that, like in comic form. I think the comics would really lend themselves to that kind of sporadic anthology format. Whereas Kleya, I want a book. I want a full-on, I want her biography,
I suppose the thing is, like, Kleya would be more... You'd want more dense story, whereas a comic, you can visualize and show an awful lot more. Show of what's going on in the galaxy. So, yeah, it'd probably work better that way. But yeah, I think that's the thing. You come out of this, and although we know this is the end of it, you're still pining for more, and you still want to know where did that go? What was that?
It's a shame there's not more Andor. Like, I would almost love it for them to release a series called to be fair, what if the next animated series was Tales of the Rebellion?
Yeah, I mean, perfect.
And then we get stuff about Kleya and Vel. That might be a thing.
That'd be it. I mean, because I think Lucasfilm's idea was to do these over 5 seasons.
I think it was thrown around 5 years, yeah. But I think Tony Gilroy was a bit like, this is going to like. Well, I understand why, but you think like Andor season 1, I think took them 2 or 3 years. It might have even been 5 from the conceptual stage. And then, well, I think, because Rogue One came out 2016. Like, it was the second Star Wars film in the canon. So that came out 2016. I think Andor came out, was it before COVID? No, just after, no, it was after COVID, wasn't it?
After COVID, yeah.
So it's like 2021 or so, or 2022. And we're in 2025. So we're nearly 10 years on from Rogue One. And that's pretty much all Tony Gilroy's been doing. So it's like, I'm sure you're just looking it up, but like, if you think it's been 10 years,
22
is Andor season 1, yeah. So I think he might have had a little break after Rogue One, but then I think 2018 was when they kind of delved back into making Andor, or start making Andor. So you think 3 or 4 years to make Andor season 1 to understand those bits, and then it took another 2 or 3 years to make Andor season 2. If you did 10 seasons of that, even if you really smoothed over things, he would be doing it for probably another 10 years.
But the thing is, I think, I know these are just little snapshots of the year, but it works.
Yeah.
I think you'd run the risk of stretching it out too much. And that season 1, yeah, that's fine, because you've got to get people to understand who this character is, really, and where he's come from. but season two, I think it works better this because then you can be quite. I mean, several of these episodes are very intense. And I think trying to then stretch out over because what each would be, 9, 10 episodes each season,
Hmm.
you then run the risk of diluting the quality of it.
Yeah.
So it, for all it means that we don't get any more, I think it's the right choice. I mean, what do I know? I just enjoy the stuff, but I'm not writing it that. But I do think that yes, you would dilute it too much by trying to stretch it out. Just which
Yeah.
then would be a disservice against it.
Yeah, we don't know what else is coming. I know Gilroy says he wants to take a step away from Star Wars, which I get. You want to take a breather. But I feel like in a few years' time, he's going to want to come back because he said how freeing it was in a lot of ways. Like he could really do what he wanted and the resources Disney Lucasfilm gave him. And if Disney Lucasfilm don't release anything like Andor for a few years, they're going to be begging for more Gilroy. And I would really like that.
But the thing is that gives also other chances of people who maybe aren't Star Wars fans who think, I've got a story. Yeah, it could probably fit in the Star Wars universe.
Hmm.
Give me a chance. So you might get other people in there who it's all fantastic having people who understand Star Wars, but then sometimes you can get a bit blindsided of, well, no, it should be this, it should be this. Whereas if someone who comes with fresh ideas, who may then go fact check and go, right, where does this fit in? I want to do this, but I want to get the law right. So just tell me, this is what we're doing, but we're going to make it work.
Hmm.
Not having that biased thing of, oh, well, we've got to have it because Vader was here at this time on September, so we have to, you know, have
Filoni, I think,
some,
gets caught in the reeds a bit of
yeah.
those kind of things.
So, yeah.
But I'm just thinking, like, I really am excited, like, not so much of the Obi-Wan series, but like, or Mandalorian really, but when it came to Acolyte, which is obviously its own thing, although it's an uneven show and stuff, and it's got its criticisms, again, I'm going to make you and Dave rewatch that probably next year, and we'll have a bit of breathing space away from it to really understand it. But Acolyte, because it was 100 years sort of, but it's 100 years after the High Republic era of publishing and 100 years before Phantom Menace-ish. The thing is that the series came out, and then there's already there's a book that's out now or just coming out called Wayseeker, which is about Venestra Rowe and Indara. Then there's also another book which is going to be about Yord Fandir and Jeki Lon, which is the gentleman with the yellow lightsaber, the black gentleman with the yellow lightsaber who's kind of a douche. That's Yord Fandir, and then Jeki Lon, she was the Thelan, like very pale skinned character who really held her own against the Stranger and Acolyte. There's going to be a book about those two, as well as the book again that I already mentioned about Vernon and Dara Stokes. We've already got those two, and I think there might be another thing coming out, rumoured about Acolyte. So we've got 2 or 3 pieces of content that are coming out about Acolyte, and I wouldn't be surprised if they continued and did more stuff with it gently as we go along. But with Andor, now that it's kind of done, obviously Star Wars Rebels is done. Again, I think Tales of the Rebellion is probably the next thing they're going to do. After that, it's kind of going to be free reign. And I'm really excited about what Lucasfilm Publishing are going to be able to do once they've kind of washed their hands of this era, on-screen stuff. And Filoni and Favreau are like hyper-focusing on like the Mandoverse and stuff after Return of the Jedi. I'm like, what can go on now? Now that this is all established, and there's not going to be any big plans for it in theory for a while, what can all the writers of comic books and books do in this era? Because of these big jumps, as you say, you've got these year gaps. You can have anything. You could write more Vandal's story if people want. I'd rather not. I'd rather have about other people, but...
That's the thing. I mean, someone might come and go, we want to focus on this character that we just happened to walk past the camera at some point in episode 3. The thing is, it gives people a chance to tell more stories out there. It gets the writers who can kind of go, I can see that, but we probably needed a bit more, so I'm going to write a book on this. Like you say, someone to go out there and write a book about Kleya. It's giving us that opportunity of we can see there's a seed there, and we can see that lots of people are like, going into it, you kind of thought, Luthen was the big thing, but as you go along, you realise how much Kleya is really important, and you want to know a bit more. There's a little teaser that she was. It had that vibes of aliens with Ripley and you kind of thing. But again, what was Luthen? Was it? I read somewhere someone said that he could have been a mud trooper.
I think that was around a year after the Empire took over. So I think he was in the Empire. And I don't know who the natives he was killing was. I think when he first found her, I don't think they were on Naboo. I think they were on Naboo later on when you point out when he blew up the bridge. But I don't know. That would be really interesting. I'd love to know more about that,
Well, that's the thing. People then kind of, oh, what was that? All it takes now is a writer to go, do you know what? I'm going to put my name to that. I'm going to write something. And again, it's that weird thing until Andor came out, and I did that podcast with it, I didn't realise how much more Star Wars there was out there.
Yeah.
And that, and shows like this then can highlight, and people will look on Disney and see Tales and, Young Jedi. That's a good start way drug for your kids and that. But the thing is that there is so much out there, and for all ages, as I say, from really young kids, we're Young Jedi, up until hard hitting things like K2SO going down a hallway.
Well, my next question I was actually going to say is, obviously in the background you've got K2SO in the background. We touched upon loving droids. Let's delve into K2. So, how did you feel about K2's light introduction in the last episode, and then how have you felt about him in this? Because did you remember much of Rogue One? What's your thoughts on K2 in general?
It's funny because when you were talking about him in season 1, I'm thinking, right, okay, he must be really important, but I can't remember.
Yep.
I remember Rogue One being really good, but again, Cassian wasn't that memorable.
No,
and that
was Jin Erso's story, really, isn't it? He's just a part of it.
So I'm thinking, okay, right, and then is it Adam Tulloch who does the?
Alan Tudyk.
He does the voice. He's
a voice in everything. He's an iRobot. He's Hey Hey and Moana. You look at his list of stuff he's done, and he's probably touched everything that you've enjoyed.
Yeah, I mean, Dedra is also, in case people haven't worked out, she's the voice of Yennefer in the Witcher games. It's weird sometimes. I mean, I've just watched the first 3 episodes of Tales of the Underworld, and I'll listen to Ventress, and I'm thinking, I recognise that voice, right? And she's, if anyone who plays Marvel Rivals, she's the voice of Hela, and that. It's funny how these voice actors, they're everywhere, and you don't always realise that. I mean, because they can pull off so many different accents, voices, but yeah. His dry humour is so good. And that I've written it down somewhere and I can't find it now. But when he walks on the bridge, and that trooper's like, "There's a security droid coming towards us." Someone sent it, and he's like, "What does he say? Oh, are you with us?"
Mm-hmm.
No. Oof, and just knocks him off. And they're like, "Oh, now." Going back a little bit, we know that Andor, Cassian, Melshi, and Kleya are kind of trapped in the apartment, and Hertz has got his team going in, and that. But I must say, I mean, it would ruin it. But there's part of me kind of the Superman themes going through the editors, like K2SO's kind of walking down. But at the same point, it's quite harrowing because when he kind of goes down the corridor to where the guy's reporting back to Partisan, and comms just go, you see the shadow and him kind of walking down there, and the comms go dead. You think, oh, and then he walks in. The way he picks up one of the guys and just drops him again, and that boots another guy into the.
That kick is brutal,
and it's like, oh, it's just, I mean. It's scary in one sense because he doesn't run. I mean, in the battle of in the Gorman Massacre, When they start running and taking names and that, you can think, oh God, these are really bad, this.
Yeah.
But in one sense, it's more scary when he's just casually walking towards you and that. And then when he walks up to Hertz and Hertz is like that, and he just grabs hold of him, you just think, oh, what? At that point, I thought, what's he going to do? It's going to be a kill off screen, you know, going to see. And then next thing you know, he's just holding him as a body shield
Yeah.
as he's just getting decimated. And it's like, oh my God. It's brutal. But at the same point, you're cheering for him,
Oh, yeah.
you
And he's
know.
hilarious.
And then it's like, hello, I've cleared a path. So what? I mean, Cass is useless at that. I mean, fair enough. Melchi says, "Shall we shut the door?" It's like, no, we'll be trapped in it. You're fucking trapped anyway, mate. At least put some barricade up there or do something at the moment. You know, and it's typical. Soon he said, no, no, no. Because I think Melchi asked him twice, shall I shut the door? And then, no, 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 no. Stun grenade. It's like, almost enemy there, Cass.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's brutal, but at the same point, you're cheering him on because the the problem sometimes with things like this, Cass isn't going to die.
Yeah.
Melchi's not going to die.
Yeah.
Katie Esso's not going to die. Clara, you just don't know. But to be fair, if them three aren't going to die, she's probably going to be all right. They're probably going to extract her. But at the same point, I think her rescue is a bit more kind of you're on edge more than what I was with Moff.
Yeah.
With Mon. When Cassian can, because that's brutal when he shoots the driver. But you don't feel as nervous for them as whereas you do this when they're kind of pinned in. And
yeah, I thought Kleya was going to die. I was fairly sure. I was like, well, surely she won't survive because it's unfortunately the Star Wars knowledge of like, well, she's not in Rogue One or the original trilogy, but it's like, there's a lot of people not in those things.
But the problem is that if K2SO hadn't come, they wouldn't have got out there. I don't think. No. I don't see how they would have got out there really, because from what again. I'm surprised that there wasn't a back exit. These all being super spies. Surely there should have been a contingency plan of if we get trapped in here, can we get out a different way?
Well, I think she said there was, but there isn't time. And, I think the whole point was if you knew someone's kind of coming for you, you may be able to escape quietly. But if they've got the whole building surrounded and they're like tracking you and they know they're looking for you in particular, there's no real way to get out of Coruscant if they've got your face everywhere.
Yeah.
Once they know your general location, they can just set up a perimeter and then bring it in and in and in and in, and eventually you're locked in.
I may have missed this. Who dropped the comms? Was it them or was it the Empire?
What do you mean?
But the comms were blocked, so...
Oh, yeah, so it was the Empire initially, yeah. The Empire, once they got into the area, they did a little boop, boop, boop thing, and then it turned off all comms in the area, and then K2 went up there and, smashed that guy's head into the into the thing, and then it made it work again.
Right, okay. Because I thought... because I felt like the troopers... That's another thing. The troopers... A lot of them don't have helmets on, which is kind of a weird thing, because normally you used to see...
because they're not technically stormtroopers, they're like ISB police. So they're more they're kind of almost like the FBI. That's
why they can shoot better. Right, get it.
Yeah, so they're almost like they're the equivalent of the FBI kind of, or like maybe more like a SWAT team, I guess, as opposed to stormtroopers are just the army.
That's why I suppose Hertz just puts on like a little bit of a body armor kind of thing on.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
But, yeah. Are you excited then to see K2 in Rogue One? Because he's in it a lot more.
Because obviously, I know he's part of it, but it's just not. It's not that. It's what 8-9 years since I've watched it, probably.
Wow, have you only seen it once then?
Yeah, I think I saw it when it came to
God,
pictures.
so jealous of you. I've seen Rogue One like 10 times. I
I,
know. I can tell you probably almost every line of dialogue of K2. I know when he comes into it. I know everything about him
I think it's
in
that
that.
thing of I've, I'd been 10 years ago, because it's, what is it, 10 years? When did,
2016, so 9 years ago.
right, so, okay, well, a fair bit were going on in my life at that point.
Mm.
My dad had passed away, so, um, it's, so, I think I probably will have been, in fact, might not even watch it at the cinema. I
Might
may
have been
watch it
DVD or something.
on DVD or
It was
something, and
before
then
Disney
thought,
Plus, because Disney Plus really came around COVID time. I think it was
yeah.
just before
So
COVID.
it could have been a blockbuster kind of thing of, oh yeah, this is awesome, and then
Or
just
Netflix or something.
never really kind of gone back and watched it.
Well, and also when Andor started and we started watching Andor, 3 odd years ago, you haven't watched it since then.
No,
So it was like,
well, well,
I haven't watched it in 3 years, to be fair. I haven't watched it since, I think a little bit before Andor came out, I think I watched Rogue One. But because Megan's seen it twice, I think.
right,
So, yeah. And I think one of
yeah.
those times was COVID.
I think when we finished Andor season 1, I was going to watch it, but then because we started, right, we'll do Rebels and all these other bits, it kind of got, well, I'll just hang on for that, and
Yeah.
then I'm kind of glad because. I think it's going to go. I mean, as I say, I can't wait for the weekend to watch it because having seen this, the build up to it, and not. I'm sure once I start watching it, there'll be stuff I'll remember,
Mm.
but there's going to be probably lots of stuff that it's like I'd forgotten Matt Nicholson had been in it until I saw the name, I heard that, and I wrote it down. I thought, why do I know that? And then kind of had a look and I thought, oh right, okay, that's what it is.
Mm.
So yeah,
Yeah, whereas a lot of the book fans, there's the book Catalyst, a Rogue One story, or Rogue One Catalyst, and that's all about Galen Erso and like lots of other stuff sort of prior to Rogue One. It's written by James Luceno. I've not personally read it, but I also know there's the book Rebel Rising. So if people want to have some reading before watching Rogue One, I've not read these two novels. I'll hold my hands up. Rebel Rising is all about Jyn Erso and her life as Saw Gerrera and sort of after that, and I think a bit more of a childhood. Whereas Catalyst is all about Mads Mikkelsen, Orson Krennic, sorry, not Mads Mikkelsen, Galen Erso, Orson Krennic, and so you've kind of got the two books. It's like Rebel Rising is like the rebellion side almost, and then you've got Catalyst, which is like the Empire side, and it's kind of the converging of before the events of Rogue One. But I'm very excited.
yeah,
I love Rogue One. I'm very, very excited about it. Rewatching it, especially with all this added context and things. And it is, it's one of the best Star Wars movies, period. It's phenomenal. And the fact that you haven't seen it in so long is great because of also the length of it. It's over 2 hours long, as most Star Wars films, but it really is, again, it's like another 3 arcs of Andor. Like 3 episodes of Andor, it's about the length of Rogue One. So it really is just another 3 episodes of Andor.
yeah.
And then we'll have finished peak Star Wars, and then we'll have to figure out what else to do with ourselves till the next few things come out, because we've got, Maul, Shadow Lord isn't
Oh
out till...
yes, I can't wait.
I thought that was coming out late this year, but I was mistaken. It's not out till next year. We got Vision Season 3 later this year, which will be fun. I like Vision Series 3, but I'm never, gagging for it. There's a few good episodes. There's obviously each season
Visions is a bit like What If, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
To a certain degree.
Like an anthology, what if he kind of separated thing. And some episodes are phenomenal, and then other episodes are crap, but it's a mixed bag. You watch something that's amazing, you only get 15 minutes. And then next year we're getting the Ninth Jedi sequel series, so that's going to be off the Vision Season 1 episode Ninth Jedi, which is awesome. So that'll be like its own thing. And then Maul Shadow Lord, and I think the rumours are next year is going to be Ahsoka Series 2. And then we're also getting Mandalorian and Grogu. So we're getting a bit more stuff next year. But the Maul stuff is going to be cool, but it's going to be more in between Clone Wars and Rebels. It's going to be, I don't know how many years it's going to go on for. If I had to guess, I would say there's going to be 3 seasons of it. And I imagine it'd be just after Clone Wars, around Solo, just before Rebels, if I had to guess. But I don't know. I have no idea anything about it. And then so you've got that, which is going to be fun. But again, there's no little dramatic tension with Maul. And then
you know that he's safe.
Yeah, so, you know what happened. We know his full story.
Yeah.
And then, Visions will be fun, or the Ninth Jedi stuff will be fun. That'll be a bit different because that will be its own characters that we don't know the fates of. But And then Ahsoka's going to be good, but again, I feel like Ahsoka's just going to be kind of Mandalorian and Grogu, and Ahsoka is kind of just going to be a warm-up to the next big Star Wars movie that Filoni's making that's like Heir to the Empire-esque. So it's like, it's going to be cool, but I've seen a lot of people posting memes online, and it's like, oh, it's a shame really, because once you finish Andor, or really, once you finish rewatching Rogue One, that's it for peak Star Wars. We're kind of, not that there's not going to be anything else good coming in the future, not that I don't love, the books, the comics, and there is some other great content, Bad Batch is really cool, but like, of the level that Andor is at.
New Hope is off peak.
I
I
love Rogue One, but we can't, I don't think anyone would say Rogue One and Andor are the same thing. They're great.
No.
If you enjoy them the same amount, that's fine, but the seriousness and political commentary of Rogue One is not like A New Hope. A New Hope is very quite simple. Here's the good guys. Here's the bad guys. It's the standard hero's journey from Joseph Campbell's writings and stuff. And it's very linked with, it's like a Western. It's a cool movie. I love A New Hope. Don't get me wrong. I love all Star Wars, but I love A New Hope. But it's not one of my favorite Star Wars films to watch. I've seen it like a billion times. It's very slow. It's cool, but there's not that much action in it. Not that I have to have action in my Star Wars, but realistically, the Death Star run is pretty much the only action in the whole film. And for a nearly 2-hour film, compared to all the other ones, it is a lot slower.
The problem is as well, because we've watched so much Star Wars and you see people make their own versions of stuff, it's like the Obi-Wan and Vader when they face off, and it's like offering next to no. But then you can go online on YouTube and you can see someone who's CGI, AI, the fight between Obi-Wan and Kenobi, and it's, oh.
Well, yeah, there's that one that's like someone is, I think they've basically redid it by having actors redo certain scenes, and then, kind of face mapping. I think it's before AI was the big thing, but like face mapping Alec Guinness's face onto theirs and kind of redoing it. I think it's like RC or RX, something or other. It's amazing.
But the thing is, in 77, this was one of them films where they weren't really sure how it were going to go.
It was an indie one-off film, wasn't it? And then Lucas had other ideas, but
it's like Alan Guinness when he was speaking to his agent, and they offered him like a percentage for doing it, and then they kind of tried to take, when they realised it would do really well, they tried to take some of it back. He said, no, I'll keep that percentage. And
he didn't have faith in it originally. He was like, it's just a weird campy film, and he didn't really get it. And then when it kind of came out, he was like, oh, people really like this. I don't know why. Like he never really liked it that much, which is quite upsetting.
I mean, he wasn't in it much anyway. It's but again, he's in one of those where it's a character who's really big and important, but they're only in a few scenes.
He's in New Hope a fair amount in the first half of the movie, but after that, he's not really.
Yeah, but he doesn't do an awful lot.
No, he teaches Luke. He kind of opens. He's the gatekeeper for Luke, isn't he? He opens the universe up to Luke, and he's the point of view character. Don't get me wrong. I don't clarify for everyone listening. A New Hope is phenomenal. It's an incredible film. It's one of the greatest films ever made. It's hard to argue, but because it's square one of Star Wars, even though I'm a proponent of watching Star Wars chronologically, the movies, I know that's a controversial opinion, but like, eventually when I have kids, I will probably be showing them Phantom Menace first. It just makes more sense to comprehend. And also kids, I think, will connect more Phantom Menace than, especially kids nowadays, more so Phantom Menace than A New Hope. But A New Hope's phenomenal. Top tier cinema. But when everyone thinks of Star Wars, the first thing they think of is New Hope. Because that is pretty much, even if you're a prequel generation, you have seen A New Hope. You were introduced to it, your parents watched it, it was on TV. Everyone has seen A New Hope probably more times than any other Star Wars content. It has been parodied more than any other Star Wars, apart from maybe Empire Strikes Back with the no, I'm your father bit. It's spot zero. It's point zero in Star Wars.
It's that thing of when if someone says, think Star Wars, the first thing that pops into my head is yellow writing, John Williams.
Exactly.
And the scroll. That's kind of what comes straight to my mind. And that's where it all started from. So again, there's nostalgia, and there's without that we wouldn't have.
Yeah,
Andor.
It just doesn't excite me anymore. I almost never want to watch the original trilogy anymore because I know a lot of people older than me and stuff, but even when I was watching the prequels, when I was waiting for Revenge of the Sith to come out, I was rewatching the original trilogy as was my dad. It was on ITV on every Friday. There was one of those films. So I've seen those films an ungodly amount of times. I don't really want to watch them anymore because I've seen them so many times.
But you're gonna.
Well, I'm gonna for our Star Wars pod, but I'm more excited to watch the sequels because I've seen the sequels less, but also I'm much more interested by yours and Dave's opinions on the sequels. Not to be rude, I don't really care about your and Dave's opinions on the original trilogy because I know what they are, because that's how I got you guys into watching all.
Because they're awesome.
If you didn't like all it's going to be is most of it is us gushing about how great it was. You know, the whole way me and Dave really connected, outside of one or two podcasts in the early days, you know, going back like 7 years ago, was we did the big collaboration with Scott, 20th Century Geek, where we did the Spider-Man and the Superman pods on. Like, we did a big collaboration. We watched all the Star Wars films getting ready for Rise of Skywalker. So even for my podcasting relationship with Comics in Motion, which is why Star Wars Chit-Chat's a thing. It's why Star Wars Comics in Canon was a thing. It's a huge part of my podcasting journey. So many people I know connected through Comics in Motion. It started with a little Dread podcast, and then pretty much immediately after that, we did a Star Wars podcast. So, like, one of my first memories of Dave is talking in depth about the original trilogy, and everyone I talk to, when you mention Star Wars, the first thing they do is tell you how much they love the original trilogy, because everyone loves it, because it's amazing. And doing a podcast on the original trilogy now in 2025 is almost reductive at this point, because there's literally nothing original anyone can say about it.
But that's the thing. Back then, to a certain degree, that story was kind of an original story.
100%. But this is 40 years ago.
Exactly. And because they've redone the Death Star several times. I mean, they redid the Death Star then.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's a story that's been redone, it loses a little bit of oomph to it each time.
Yeah.
It can look prettier, but the actual story behind it, which is why, to be fair, in Andor, I know it's about the Death Star, but it's all the political goings-on and all the kind of, you know, it's Star Wars Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
you know?
It's elevated. You know, I think Andor really shows a clear growth of what the original trilogy did was phenomenal at the time. Don't get me wrong, and it is still phenomenal. They're still some of my favorite movies. Genuinely,
you don't have to keep apologizing.
No, I know. I don't want people thinking I'm a prequel baby and I hate the original trilogy, because I generally don't. But watching Andor was exciting because it was something new and something familiar, say, at the same time, without it doing big swing and misses like Acolyte did, or being too safe like certain elements of Obi-Wan Kenobi did, missing a few beats here and there with Ahsoka. It really landed on every level. And that's what I mean by peak Star Wars, is that, I've said it so many times, but Andor is really the only Star Wars content that's come out since the original trilogy where, apart from some people saying it's a bit boring, which I disagree with, you can't really critique it, because there are minor gripes. It's not perfect, but as far as it goes, you can't critique it like the prequels. The prequels, you can spend hours tearing it apart. Rebels is great, but it starts very slow, and there's a few weaker episodes, and it's very clearly aimed at a younger audience, especially in those early seasons. Clone Wars is all over the place. You know, Acolyte, all over the place. Obi-Wan is very up and down and inconsistent. You know, the whole Mandoverse is quite safe and meandering at points. Boba Fett's really weak. Ahsoka's up and down. You know, Mandalorian, the series, is good. It's pretty cool. It's got some great stuff. It's very episodic. Do you know what I mean? Like, I could find very easy ways as why people wouldn't enjoy all Star Wars content outside of the original trilogy and Andor. And I'm just saying, when it comes to peak Star Wars in air quotes, it's going to be a long time before we find any show or movie that's going to be so good that the review of it is not us actually tearing it to shreds. Because the Acolyte stuff, apart from 2 episodes, there were a lot of heavy critiques in that. Understandably. Yeah. Same as Book of Boba Fett. Same as Ahsoka. A lot of disagreements in how much people did or didn't enjoy it. There's not really that with Andor. So that's what I mean by peak Star Wars in air quotes, you know? But we've got off track because I've been rambling and ranting about the original trilogy. So let's get on to the last sort of episode, and then we can track back if there's anything else. So I got the last episode. One of the scenes I loved the most in all of Andor, is very brief, is Saw Gerrera arguing with Mon Mothma. And I said in one of the last recordings, what I want is Saw Gerrera arguing with Mon Mothma, because we got a little bit of that in Star Wars Rebels, which I loved. And we got more of it here, and it obviously leads very much into the relationship with Rogue One. And like, again, you can't remember as much, but like, the trepidation of allowing Jyn Erso into the inner sanctum of the Rebel Alliance because of her close connection with Saw Gerrera. So how did you find Saw in this last bit and some of those moments on Yavin 4?
I love the fact that, because they believe he's on Jedha, don't they?
They know he's on Jedha.
Oh, well, then
and you see that shot where he's literally on Jedha looking out the window.
It's that thing where, you know when your mum catches you and like, you've just eaten the biscuits and you go, no. But that brass balls of him of like, yeah, but I don't care. It's like, stop blowing up ships. Stop,
You don't know where I am. It's like, but I'm literally watching you do this stuff.
This guy just walked behind you saying, you're on Jedha. It's obvious. So, I get it. You're pissed off. You want to, but that's not the way to do it. Just hold back a little bit. Maybe if you want quite as,
paranoid
loose cannon.
Oh yeah.
You'd still be around. And that, I mean, he could probably argue it's the gas that's probably done it to him, because it's weird watching that scene with him and Will when he's like, breathe it in, and that. I now actually do think that maybe that suit that he's got on just lets in a bit of that gas to him, because maybe he's become so addicted to it. Again, someone write a story and give us that, because that would make a bit more sense.
I'd love more Saw Gerrera. I'll tell you what, a story I would love, some comics of Saw Gerrera or more show. If they just said, hey, we're doing the Saw Gerrera show, I'd be like, a live action. I'd be like, I am in. Give me all of Andor again, but literally just Saw Gerrera.
Again, it could be quite depressing.
Oh yeah, it would be horrendous.
These last few episodes have really worked well, because although it's quite a down, depressing, serious show, K2SO every now and again, when he comes in with little quips, I feel you kind of need that. And I think Saw he's a little bit like that in a way. He doesn't give a shit really what anyone says. He's very much he's bitter, and all he wants to do is make the Empire hurt, and he doesn't care about loss of life and anything else really. He's very much and he's a bit like a typical teenager of like, oh, I do what I want kind of thing, and I suppose they're just trying to angle him and aiming him the right direction, but it's like, just hang on, we're doing things, we're setting things in place, just hold back a little bit. And he's like, nah, fuck yeah. And, which is why we do like that character. I mean, it's only little bits. I thought we might have got a bit more out of him in this, and I would love to have seen a bit more, but at the same point, just that little bit there, and that kind of, that argument of him and Mon, and that, I think it works really well. And again, it would be nice to see a bit more of him. And that we do see him in Rogue One a fair bit, because
he's in it quite a lot, yeah.
And that. But
he is.
So in a way, maybe that's why they kind of pull back a bit, because well, if you want more of him, watch this movie that we did.
I think that's exactly it. I think that's what the final episode has threw me off a little bit, because I thought most of it was really going to be trying to save Kleya, her probably not surviving or giving up or whatever, and then the last few minutes just being on Yavin 4. But they rescue her and they get back like 15 minutes, 20 minutes into the episode, and there's still like half an hour left. And the last half hour, nothing really happens. It's really just kind of an epilogue.
It's that build-up kind of, suit up. It's that suit-up part.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we do have the bit when, because they just steal the ship, don't they?
Yeah, they steal the U-Wing and then bring it back, and then drape it like
says, I've just told that you kidnapped me.
Yeah, exactly.
There is a moment, I think it's just after he says that, though, when they say that they're going to Coruscant. He says, oh, I was at Coruscant. There was 200 of us. The Empire were there. Oh, the Emperor was there.
Yeah.
And it's weird the fact that he's quite jolly, and then he mentions the Emperor, and he's like, he seems quite downbeat
Hmm.
and that, and it kind of like I'm thinking, oh, something must have happened at that, and I wonder, does that tie back to maybe Order 66 of when everything kicked off?
I don't think it was quite that long ago because I feel like I think I saw it online somewhere. I think he was built about 8 years, 7 or 8 years prior to this. I think he was built
Right.
around 11 or 12 years before the Battle of Yavin. So I think it was nearish to when the Kenobi show was, I think. So it says before Rebels, before that, but I don't think it was like the turn of the Empire. But he does say a parade, which is interesting. But I
Yeah.
think if I had to guess, because I did look this up and I couldn't find anything specific, but I think the main time the Empire does parades, especially if Palpatine's there, is on Empire Day, which obviously
Man.
we see in Rebels, which is the day that the Empire was birthed, which is Ezra Bridger's birthday.
Yeah.
And they do in the comics, the Star Wars comics, there is one or two parades, which I think again is on Empire Day. So I think it's quite likely it was probably just like the 10-year anniversary of Empire Day. If I had to take a guess, that's what I would say, which was again about 8, 9 years before this.
Because maybe it was that thing of Order 66 and Palpatine comes out and he's like, stop the Jedi that was kind of plotting against us and all this. And he has all these droids and everything else there, and they all like celebrating him. And it's like, yeah, that was not a good day, that actually, because of the loss that we actually had.
Well, I think the Palps in the first couple of years, it was more. The Senate was still a thing, but he was really like slowly or quite fast stripping things back. And when we get into the Bad Batch, you'll kind of see the change. And it took about a year and a half
Right.
to really fully have the Empire kind of as we see it in Andor. But a lot of people didn't realize the tyranny of the Empire for the first few years. It was like, yeah, a few rights been stripped away here and a few planets suffered. But it was really about it was really about 5-10 years after the Empire was birthed. That was when it really started. The rebels really started rising up, because that was when things started to go bad. Because that's when, the Death Star was originally in planning phases, but then it's like, oh, the Death Star needs more resources from here and more from there and more from that. And instead of just going to a planet and casually mining, they start strip mining and destroying entire planets and infrastructures and, taking out entire worlds or groups of people under the guise of this or that. Like, it's kind of reflected in Arcana 5. It's shown in the Gorman Massacre. Like, that kind of stuff started happening more and more as the Empire got more and more desperate and more keen to make the Death Star. That was like the real undoing of the Death Star in a lot of ways. It's what Leia says to Tarkin in A New Hope. Is, the tighter your grip, the more systems slip through your fingers. And that's true.
Yeah.
That's what happens here in Andor.
Yeah, I found it also interesting when they do come back. When Katie, so again, he says, well, they'll probably just shoot us out of the sky thinking we're, hostile.
Yeah.
So, try it again. The system's not working. The system's working. It's just they're not responding.
Yeah.
But when Andor comes in, he's like, I've got this important information. And the council a bit like, yeah, do we want to know? The whole idea of this is to fight the Empire. There's some important information which, I feel he should have probably just told them what it was. But he seemed a bit kind of peeved off and he didn't really want to kind of give him the full information.
I don't think he knew, because Megan said something similar, but if you think, we know what it all
No,
is.
Kleya tells him. She tells him in the room.
She doesn't tell him. She's struggling to remember. You have to think. Obviously, what we know about the Death Star. Okay, Lonnie tells Luthen it's called the Death Star. I don't think Luthen tells Kleya it's called the Death Star. He just says it's a weapon. And Gorman and Kyber and Jedha and Galen Erso and these main bits that she has to remember. Then she has to. So Lonnie finds out. He tells Luthen. Luthen tells Kleya. Kleya tells Andor. Andor tells the Council. So that's 5 layers of things. And each time it gets told, one little bit gets forgotten. And I think when Kleya's like telling him, she's like in the safe house and she's like, Galen Erso, repeat that name. Remember the name, Galen Erso. Kyber, the Gorman Massacre, it's connected, Jedha, it's something about Jedha and Kyber. And, but she never says she says weapon. I can't remember if she says super weapon. She doesn't say Death Star to him.
No.
So which is
No,
why
I suppose that's my mind filling in.
Well, that's what Megan did as well.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people did that, but because I've watched the episode twice as well, I think it is really, and also you got to think of like the amount of stuff they went through and all the stress. Like,
yeah, true.
If someone tells you here's 10 words you have to remember, you're probably only going to remember like 7 or 8 of them if you're lucky. And so, and also he's being argued against and pushed against, and also, I think when he mentions a guy called Tivik in this episode, and Tivik he meets, Tivik doesn't show up in Andor, but Tivik he meets is the second scene in Rogue One. The first scene in Rogue One is Krennic going and finding Galen and Erso and Kid Jinn and etc. But literally after the Rogue One title comes up, it's Andor going to the rings of Kafrene and meeting Tivik. That's the first thing we see of Andor in Rogue One. So, and that's when he says, Tivik's like, he's got the guy with the bad arm, and he's like, there's a super weapon. I don't know, I don't think he uses the word Death Star even then. I think the word Death Star gets told to Andor when he saves the pilot, Bodhi, which is what Saw Gerrera, who he's got, and because he's an engineer who worked on it. So, it's really, I think it wasn't that Andor was holding anything back. I think Andor was trying to tell them everything, but also it's probably hard because they were going, well, Luthen was this and Luthen was that. And it's like, I've just had one of my mentors and best friends get killed. I've had to witness all these horrible stuff, and now I'm having to argue against these people who don't really respect me because they're trying to get under me.
I mean, when he turns around and he says to Mon, he says, well, last time we seen him a year ago, when he came to me and he saved Mon's life. And Mon's like, oh, right, yeah. And then she kind of managed to spout up and say something then. But again, the why is it these councils are just crap at making decisions? It's frustrating the fact that, he says, that he's sacrificed and give up more than any of you have. He's the one, we wouldn't be here on the Yavin if it weren't for him. He's set all this up to a certain degree. He's kind of done all this, and he's given his life, and it's like I can feel the frustration from Cassian of like, you dickheads, pay attention, and that. And then when Bond talks to Vel and she's like, basically, hey, my super spy, go speak to the other super spy to find out. And when they kind of met, I kind of thought, oh, is it going to be one of these of, let's see what I can get? And she's like, so I've been told to go and ask you about this, what's to it? I love the fact that they were both just so honest about it. Yeah. I mean, they drank and they gave toast to all the people that they've lost. I wondered whether you were going to say Bix in there, but I suppose
she just left. She didn't die. Well, she says to him, doesn't she? Says you should go see Bix, and he says, "Yeah, I'll do it when this is all over." See, I think Vel must know what we see at the end of Andor. I think so as well,
because she says you should go sooner rather than later.
Well, someone had to get her there.
Yeah, true.
Someone had to know in some way. It wouldn't be hard. And also, she's there with B2 Emo, and also there was a slight rebel presence on that planet because that's how this whole season starts. In Brasso's there with Bix and Wilmon and stuff like that. So there was a bit of a rebel presence because they were rebelling a bit against the Empire and their grain capturing. So yeah, I think that's the case. But I like those interactions. I think with Mon and stuff, I think it's tough because Luthen was a bit of a loose cannon, and obviously they just had that argument with Saw, and I think Saw and Luthen were often collaborators, so I think they compare Luthen and Saw a lot, and Luthen was a prick to people, which doesn't help. But I think one of the things I've seen people online talk about is that although it is annoying that Andor wasn't fully listened to in the council sort of room, and I mentioned it earlier in this conversation, I think that what it does show is that Draven then goes to Andor at the end and says, right, you can go talk to Tivik. We're going to trust you to go and talk to Tivik. Something isn't adding up. Draven is starting to believe Andor because he's like, you've come back. You said Luthen's died for all this stuff. Now we've got Tivik talking about Jedha, but he won't tell us anything else. That can't be a coincidence. He's only asking
for Andor as well, though, isn't he? He's just
exactly. And so I think it really does line up because I feel like in Rogue One, there's points where the Rebel Alliance are like, no. And then certain members of the Rebel Alliance are like, oh, I think I believe him. I think they don't. There's quite a big argument in Rogue One.
Have we seen Tivik before in Andor?
No.
Tivik
only,
so he's only... Rebels.
He's only in
He's
Rogue
only
One.
in Rogue One.
Yeah, he's
Right,
not in anything else at all. Because I when they kept saying Tivik, I was like, Tivik. I was like, is that the guy with the arm? And I kept thinking, and I waited till we finished it, and then I looked it up, and he only appears in there. But I will say something I noticed, which I quite liked, was Vel doesn't seem to drink alcohol, because when he mentioned, she says just this once.
Yeah.
And it was very subtle, but I quite like that because it's a really minor thing. But you don't really get characters in series that don't drink unless they are like an out and out alcoholic and there's a drinking problem, and like them drinking is going to be a big plot device. I just quite like the subtlety of like, yeah, I don't drink, but I will on this one occasion.
Yeah.
And I'm like, subtle, but I like that. It's weird to say, but the representation of that, which I quite enjoyed, which is a nice little touch of Vel. And I think she's a really cool character. I'd like to see more of her.
Yeah.
There's a few other, I know we're nearing the 2-hour mark, so I'm starting to wrap up. But there's a couple of other points I did want to touch on. There's Partagaz in the ISB. There's the Bix ending. We've already spoken about Dedra. Merrick is mentioned, which is Antok Merrick. He's the leader of Blue Squadron. He's in Rogue One as well. I did a little mini video on him if people want to check that out. So there's the ISB and the Bix ending, and then there's Perrin as well. So Perrin, Mon Mothma's husband, obviously, he's seen basically having
Who
an
was
affair.
that lady? Was that Tao's wife?
So close. I thought it was Tay, but no, it's Davo Skoldron's wife, Runai. So Davo Skoldron, the one who Mon married off the daughters to.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so basically, Perrin's daughter is married to Runai's son. And they're cheating, they're sleeping with each other.
Keep it in the family, I guess.
That's very Game of Thronesy, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So that was an interesting little part, because I recognise her as well.
I thought it was Tay's wife. I'm thinking, maybe he cops off with her, because, like, obviously Tay's
we never see Tay's wife, because I did originally think the same thing. And then I looked it up.
No,
and I
we
was
don't know.
No, I looked it up because I was like, is that Tay's wife? And I was like, I don't think it was. She was at the ceremony and I couldn't put my finger on it. And then I managed to find a picture of her and blah.
It's a weird scene to be in it, though. And then,
I just quite like it shows that Perrin's a bit lost. And obviously his daughter has gone off to live her own life. Mon's just abandoned her. What's he doing? He's just sat, drinking, sleeping and so on. He's clearly not happy.
Yeah.
And it's kind of show. It's like, well, how about you weren't such a prick? Like, it would have probably, maybe if you weren't such a dickhead, your wife would have let you in. But instead, he got left behind.
Yeah, true.
And that's really what he deserves. Last two bits. So we've got the ISB and Bix stuff. Is there anything else, by the way, that I haven't touched of those outside of those two before we get into the final parts?
I'll wait, because that ties in with the ISB. Right.
Okay. Well, let's go to the ISB then. Let's do it.
Okay. I loved hearing Nemik's voice.
Yes, the manifesto.
Manifesto that got out there into the world.
Yeah.
At first, I thought it was just kind of playing and they were just kind of doing a bit of a scene there, and then realizing, no, Partisans actually
changes. It goes from I can't remember. It's not not diuretic. There's the word that Jack used, which I'm not fancy enough to know. It was where you've got music inside universe and outside universe. You know, and we heard it outside, like the soundtrack, almost like a narration.
And then you felt you went into the room.
Then you could hear there's a slight change in the audio, and I was like, "Is that being played inside?" And then we see it. Yeah.
And I just thought, I just. Again, I mean, Nemik's in for what, 2-3 episodes, and that
3,
and obviously he gets shot, but then it's the crunch that gets him. But I just love the fact that his manifesto's out there, and it's actually being acknowledged that it's out there as well. And I just thought it was a good way to kind of be wrapping it all up.
The way it's spread. It's also diegetic, by the way, not diuretic. I was thinking it was diuretic. I was like, I'm pretty sure that's what happens when you drink something and it makes you need to pee, like caffeine and things. So diegetic. So it's diegetic is inside and non-diegetic is out. But sorry, I just want to clarify that. And people listening going, it's not. Why are you saying diuretic, you weirdo? What do you think about Partagaz shooting himself?
Well, I mean, they didn't really give much of an option, because the reaction of the stormtroopers were like, they kind of edge forward when the gunshot goes off, and like I can't remember. We've seen him a few times, but
Yeah, I
I'm
can't remember
not.
if it's like Radget or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he just puts his hand just like, no.
Mm.
That blaster that looks like Han Solo's kind of blaster. I'm sure it's just a general
I think
one,
it's just a handheld blaster. Yeah.
but I just thought they kind of didn't give him much of an option at this point, did they?
Well, you saw what happened to Dedra. So
Yeah.
that's what would have happened to him.
So it's a case of which would be even worse, I suppose. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a good possibility it's open population. He's done for. He's old anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, he just kind of thought. I, I think they knew full well what was going to happen.
Hmm.
When he says, "I just need a moment to settle my to
But with my
my
thoughts, I think.
yeah," and it's like, right. As soon as he kind of said that, I thought, well, you're not legging it anywhere, so there's obviously you've got something in there. When he just puts the gun on, so it's like, well, I don't feel that bad for you, to be fair, mate, but still, it's not great the fact that they've not given you much choice, and again, it's that reaction of the stormtroopers of like they're going to go forward. It's like, oh, someone's attacking him. Maybe they're not quite sure. And it's like, no, clean up an eye wall.
Yeah, Partagas as a character, I really enjoyed him. I thought something was going to happen to him because I was like, again, he doesn't show up again. Yeah, he's not in Rogue One. He's not in anything else that I remember. The actor who plays him is great, but like I really liked him as a character. It's like the same as him and Dedra. Like I was rooting for Dedra a bit before we got to sort of the Gorman stuff to a degree. And Partagas, whenever he was on screen, I thought he did a phenomenal job. But like by the end, you're like, you do deserve to all die because you are horrible.
They've
horrible
got good
people.
Screen presence. They command the screen when they come on, and that's the thing. I mean, so sometimes it's just that facial, that they can kind of a certain look they can give, and the face can just say so much without actually saying anything. And I think that's kind of what they have, and they've got that presence in the room. You look around the room and you look at Hertz and Lonnie and that, and like, yeah, they're all right, but the little weasels really. But then when Dedra walked into a room, now maybe because she was a woman in a place where it was majority of men, but you noticed her. Again, Parson, I know he's high up there, but there's a presence in the room. The only other person really who was doing that was what's his name? Kenrick?
Who, sorry?
Yeah, Ben Mendelssohn's.
Krennic. Yeah.
Krennic.
Orson Krennic. Yeah.
When they walk into the room, you take notice, and that's what Parson kind of had. And that, so, sad in one sense for him, I guess, but I suppose it's better than the choice that he would have had.
Yeah.
Of just been.
Narkina 5.
I thought he could have finished off working on the Death Star.
Well, Dedra gets to do that.
Yeah.
What was there? You said you wanted to mention something at the ISB. Was that what you wanted to mention?
It was the Nemik's manifesto.
Bro. Yeah, I love that. Anytime I hear, Nemik was probably my favorite character from season 1. I him and Bimo, I love Brasso as well, to be fair, but like I love Nemik. That's why probably the High Stark is one of my favorites. But so the final part really is quite fitting because it's the last scene in the whole show. And again, not to be a dick, but I predicted it. I said it. I said it more than once in these recordings. I said I want the ending to be Bix, all okay, just kind of looking up. I said I want her to know that, the Death Star's blown up or whatever, but the insinuation is she's okay, she's looking up and she's happy and fine, and it is almost a post-credit scene. So I want to clarify here, again, I released a clip about this, 3-minute video on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube to say, the baby is not Poe Dameron, okay? It's not. It's not, bloody not. I'm sick of people saying it. Just literally Google, okay? He's got very established parents, Shara Bay and Kez Dameron, the heroes of the rebellion, damn it, okay? They're in Shattered Empire, the 4-part comic series set after Return of the Jedi. They're in the 2020 Star Wars comics written by Charles Soule, set between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. They are major players in the rebellion, okay? Poe Dameron was born on Yavin 4 about a year after A New Hope, okay? His mother passed away when he was like 8 years old or so from like blood burn. and it's a horrible disease, but they are awesome, great characters. I love seeing more about them. Bix is not one of the parents. I swear, Star Wars will not retcon this because they've been pretty good with not retconning bar.
So what you're saying, there's a chance.
Well, I mean, technically, Filoni likes to tweak things a lot, but that's quite a big thing. Erasing Shara Bay and replacing with Bix.
But it doesn't all have to.
No, it doesn't.
Go together.
I'm fine with Bix having a kid and them just living a happy, normal, non-rebellious life. I know Bix was in for the rebellion and stuff, but, there's been people online who are quite mad because they feel like it's a trope or they feel like Bix's agency in some ways taken away. But I'm like, you can get, I know it may be a weird thing to say in modern day, but there are some women out there who do actually like having a child and taking care of them. They don't her whole personality was not solely being a revolutionary. She went through so much horrible stuff in her life. Maybe it's actually quite nice for her to actually just relax and have some time away, in the dawn of the Galactic Civil War. Although being a new parent is not easy, especially a single parent, and losing the dad of the child is awful, it might be quite nice for her to at least have several years on this quite simple harvesting life with B2 Emo there and whatever Brasso's partner name was. It might be kind of nice for her to have a breather, considering she spent so long being tortured, then so long struggling with PTSD, and, being sexually assaulted, and all these other horrible things happening to her. It's like, fighting in the rebellion is not easy. And I know she wanted to fight and she wanted to do it, but she did some great stuff. She really inspired some great people. She saved people's lives. She did so much. And I when I watched the ending, I was like, I was really touched by it. And I saw a lot of people online kind of moaning about her, just having a kid. And I'm like, it's quite an important thing for some people. So I personally really liked that.
You've got. Well, we're assuming Cassian's the father.
Yeah, I think that's the insinuation. Yeah,
something there that maybe they could do something with later. But to be fair, he could just become a farmer. Nothing wrong with that. That's fine. It's kind of an end of a story there, but it's kind of giving you a bit of a happy ending there. Of at least that she's all right. It was good because you had B2 Emo kind of, got running around. It like having two little kids kind of running around.
Yeah, he had as a little friend.
And that, it was a nice way to finish it off. And to kind of, instead of it, especially if it's not often in Andor, something's nice.
Oh, yeah.
Normally it's a case of, yeah, you're going to die. Yeah. You're going to be depressing.
Well, even Kleya survived, and she wasn't happy about it. She didn't have a happy ending. She looks distraught. It was like, and we know what happens with Andor, K2 and stuff.
And she looks quite messed up. She's gone through an awful lot. She's just killed who is, someone who is technically like a dad to her.
Yeah, 100%.
She just had to end his life, for the greater good. But at the same point, what cost is that? She knows that's what he would have wanted, but it's still not an easy thing to do. It's just it's depressing and down and that, and then having this uplifting moment at the end, because I did kind of wonder when in the previous ones when she left, whether she was going to leave and she was going to look like she was pregnant then. But I'm kind of glad they didn't do it there. I'm kind of glad that they've done this and they've shown. And again, if someone wants to tackle and do something with it and just show that, they grow up to be awesome crop farmers. It had a feel of Lothal, kind of the planet, because...
I don't think it was Lothal, but I did get the general vibe of that kind of off-world that's kind of away from the Empire, that's not really being...
Remember the episodes in Rebels with... when Caleb goes as Caleb Dune and he's with the Lothal wolves and they're running around and there's that kind of it had that feel of there.
Yeah, I think they've confirmed it's a different planet. But
right, I want to say, it was
Mina Rao, I think, is the name of the planet.
Right, it'll probably mean something later on, and that. But
maybe, there's nothing wrong with wanting a happy ending.
Yeah, let that be the ending. It doesn't need to go anywhere else. Hopefully they Empire never touches that area, and she can just have a nice, happy life and that. But it's. I mean, I will like to go back and watch this again instead of having to do quite intense. I think, I mean, we would have recorded yesterday. It was the eldest birthday, so unfortunately we couldn't do it yesterday. But I still knew I won't be able to watch anything yesterday. I had to watch it all Wednesday night. And it's been quite. It takes quite a bit out of you when you see an awful lot going on the screen at once. Normally you're doing like one episode at a time, but I think that may have not so much hurt it in a bit, but I would have possibly preferred week by week.
Have a bit of breathing room.
Yeah, because I have heard that I think that they are debating whether they do other series like that, like because we're getting Ironheart in like a few weeks' time, so we may get a few episodes of Ironheart at once.
I think they're doing a 3-episode premiere, which is what they did with Andor.
Yeah.
I think that's the way to go. Do a 2 or 3 episode premiere, and then...
two episodes.
Yeah, I'm fine with 2.
The problem is, people who do make content, well, you want people making content about your, about your content. But the problem is, people need to get it out very quickly. We've all got lives, and this is all a bit of a hobby for us, I don't
make much money off any of this stuff. All the money I make from podcasting just goes into podcast costs.
It's all for a bit of fun. We're not here to try and make money. We're here to just try and do something we enjoy and share that with everybody else. And, whether you agree or disagree with what we've got to say. But trying to cram, 3 hours of a show and then, sorting yourself out and get ready to podcast it and do it the day afterwards, it's quite a lot. I think it would be better, maybe 2 is fine. And that, so, maybe try and rein it back a little bit.
Yeah, this has been, with the Revenge of the Sith 20th anniversary and also the 6 episodes of Tales of the Underworld coming out, all of that happening, and me obviously doing all this content creation and stuff and trying my best to release clips each day and all that sort of stuff, I have been so tired. The last month, I am knackered. I've got bags under my eyes. Most nights I've been having... Pretty much every night I've had less than 7 hours sleep. I'd say 2 or 3 nights a week I'm having probably about 5 to 6 hours sleep. Just of trying, and I'm still getting
kids.
Well, I know that, yeah, but I'm also, this is a hobby of mine and fun. I'm enjoying doing it, but like even getting the video part out, like I managed to get the audio stuff out quite quick and some clips, but doing editing a 2-hour-long video thing and trying to annotate it and have images coming up on screen to relate to the things we're talking about and swap between each speaker, because I do that manually so that it's not the Zoom standard speaker thing. Doing all of that is exhausting. It's very fun, but it takes a lot. And doing it with 3 episodes as well, I much prefer watching an episode and trying to record the same night, because then I get a couple of days breather. But also people in America get it almost a whole day ahead of us, because it comes out at like 8 p.m. for them, which is 2 a.m. for us. So it's like, by the time I even watch episodes, there's Star Wars YouTubers in America who've already released their full review.
Yeah.
It's so difficult.
Also, other morning, I work early mornings, and like Michael just said, I'm still just finishing editing. I said, what, it's not out already? Come on, I want to listen to it whilst I'm working. And that, but it is, I mean, it's a hobby. We enjoy doing it. And, myself, Dave, Jax, and Dan, who's been on, it's been great for us, but we've only had to do one show a week. You've had to do all 4, and there's all the stuff in the background. So, we appreciate what you've done, and that, and hopefully people have enjoyed it, enjoyed listening to us waffle on.
Well, yeah, exactly, But it's funny, though, because a lot of the time we do these pods and they're normally, an hour was what we were aiming for with some of the other... with Clone Wars Conversations, it's generally an hour and a half, but with all the other Andor pods, it was generally about an hour. But most of these have been 2 hours, because we're also talking about 3 episodes, which is a huge amount of content to talk about. But it is a labour of love. I'm not here to complain and go, I'm so upset. I get that. I would have liked Andor to be spread out a little bit more. I love talking about Star Wars, and I would want to have spread out a bit, just have a bit more breathing room, because also, it was great having you, Dan, Dave, and Jack on, but, prior years, I've been able to have quite a wide variety of guests, and I've reached out to a few people and I've said, look, I'm pretty certain the answer is going to be no, but am I right in thinking you're not going to be able to guest on the show? Thomas Rochester, one of the fan favorites, he and I love talking Star Wars, and they had me on. He had me on his show Reckless Rebellion with his other two co-hosts, but we couldn't do an Andor discussion show because he was having to watch 3 episodes and also do a recording, and he just couldn't fit in a guest spot on this, which I completely understand. I wouldn't have been able to be a guest on anyone else's pod for it, and there's several other friends of ours in the comics and motion sphere and other Star Wars people I've interacted with, and pretty much all of them said, I cannot watch 3 episodes of Andor in 1 or 2 days and come on the pod. I can watch 1 episode a night if I'm lucky, which is perfectly a reasonable response. But I'm excited for the future. It's been an incredible journey. It's been so much fun. There's been so many great conversations about this. Been getting really, really great responses online. If anyone does want to support me and help keep the gears turning, patreon.com/genuine chit-chat. You get bonus content every week. I'm going to be recording and releasing my Superman 4 full thoughts on Sunday as well. Which is going to be really, really good fun to release and record that in depth, because obviously you and I spoke about it a little bit on 20th Century Geek with the Super/Man documentary. But yeah, it's really good. Star Wars Chit-Chat. I'm glad I've kind of focused more on Star Wars for this specific feed, this channel, wherever people are listening and things. And I've got some really cool stuff to come. More sorting out some of the Clone Wars conversations videos for YouTube and doing clips of those. But also we're going to be doing the Tales of stuff that you haven't seen all of. We're going to be doing Bad Batch. We're going to be doing all the films again, because you and Dave have only seen Solo once or twice. Obviously Rogue One we're doing next week. The original trilogy we've all seen like a million times. So that's going to be a fun one. But then the sequels, I'm excited because you and Dave have only really seen most of the sequels like once.
It's a weird one. I'm
very excited to talk about those.
The originals, I can't guess how many times I've seen them. The prequels, I remember watching several times and they were on and off, but they were. And then the sequels, I think I've only seen them in the cinema once each.
I've seen them each in the cinema at least twice. But I think Rise of Skywalker only watched once. Force Awakens I watched 3 or 4 times in the cinema.
Wow.
Because I saw, it was a year after Dad passed away, or 2 years after Dad passed away. And it was like a real meaningful thing for me. But obviously when Force Awakens came out, everyone was seeing Force Awakens. My friends who never even saw Last Jedi or Rise of Skywalker, they went and saw Force Awakens because it was such a big moment in cinema and in history. And so I first went with one group of friends. Then the following week it was another group of friends. Then the following week it was another group of friends. And then in January, because it came out in December, in January I went with my cousin because she hadn't seen it. And she took me to see it in IMAX. So I got to see it. So I saw it 4 times in the cinema. I saw Last Jedi twice, I think. It might have been 3 times. I think it was twice. I saw Rogue One, I think only once. I saw Solo, I think twice. And I saw Rise of Skywalker, I think once. In the cinema, that is. I've watched all of those with Megan at least twice more. I watched them all by myself when they came out. As soon as they came out on Blu-ray, I'd watch them immediately then. I think before I met Megan, I was dating someone else. I showed them all of the films. So, but that was before Rise of Skywalker came out, so I watched them all then. So every time I meet someone new, I'm like, previously before Megan, someone new in my life, I show them all Star Wars films. So, yeah.
The thing is, going back and watching all the Star Wars stuff, the films I do want to watch, but the thing is, I know we're going to tackle them. So there's a big part of me that's like, I don't want to watch them now because I know we're going to watch them anyway later. But also, my reaction of watching them later is probably going to be better than going, oh yeah, I just watched it last week as well.
Yeah, half awake.
It's like watching, when we watched Revenge of the Sith and we kind of did the commentary, there was so much I'd forgotten.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's like watching Superman 1. And that, you forget how much actually happens in Smallville. And it's not just a little, it's 10 minutes and then he's Superman. There's quite a big piece there. And that, so I'm excited. I'm really excited to watch Rogue One this weekend and that. And then knowing that there's other stuff that, I'm going to have to wait. The sequel stuff's going to be quite a way away.
I think I'm probably going to make us just watch all the original trilogy in one go and do one episode on it. I don't think I can be bothered, to be honest with you. It's also just we've got so many Clone Wars episodes to release still. I still haven't released the Dark Disciple review. which is next on my list, but it's just because of Andor, I haven't been able to. It would have been perfect to release around Tales of the Underworld, but because of the 20th anniversary of Revenge of the Sith, I just haven't. So there's the Dark Disciple review, then there's the 3 episodes of the season 7 finale. I still want to do a wrap-up episode of the Clone Wars as well, which maybe we could do that this year, maybe next year, just to see if we can get on. But then there's the 3 Tales of stuff, and then there's still Solo, then there's the original trilogy, and then there's the sequels.
It's like I said, I've just watched the first 3 of the Tales of the Underworld, which, again, it's worked out perfectly because I've read Dark Disciple, Tales of the Underworld, kind of fits perfectly there. The Cad Bane stuff, I'm not quite so sure how that's going to be. Cause,
you can watch that, it won't spoil anything.
Yeah, but as I say, the Venture stuff, I would say if you haven't read Dark Disciple, get it. Audible,
do an Audible trial. If you do an Audible trial, you get 1 book for free. Dark Disciple is one of the best.
But I think it's fantastic. I mean, but anyway, that's a whole.
We've done a whole hour and a bit long conversation on Dark Disciple for Clone Wars Conversations. If you want the audio version of that is already out on the feed. That will be out. Sorry, on the feed of Star Wars Chit-Chat in the coming like a month or so, and I will be releasing the video version of that on Star Wars Chit-Chat's YouTube channel as well. But yeah, you can find me at Genuine Chit-Chat on certain social media on every social media place. But if you just want the Star Wars content, you can find me at Star Wars Chit-Chat. If you may be watching it on YouTube, where there's clips and stuff, but there's also clips on Instagram and also on TikTok at Genuine Chit-Chat. I also release loads of Star Wars clips on there as well. So Star Wars Chit-Chat, Instagram and YouTube, Genuine Chit-Chat everywhere else. And again, Maff is one of my co-hosts for Clone Wars Conversations, tackled every episode of the Clone Wars with our friend Dave. We've gone through all of it. All of that is currently on the YouTube feed, the YouTube of Genuine Chit-Chat. They're all on there. I'm going to be redoing them, making the video format a bit more palatable on Star Wars Chit-Chat. But if you want to just hit all the audio version of that kind of stuff, it is on the podcast feed of Star Wars Chit-Chat. You can find Star Wars Chit-Chat on any podcast app, and you've got all my Star Wars output I've ever done. And I've been doing it since COVID. So 5 years of Star Wars content. Most of it was weekly. Star Wars comics, all the Clone Wars Conversations, all the authors that I've interviewed as well. Loads of stuff. And obviously, please check out Genuine Chit-Chat for my interviews, including with the Star Wars authors and loads of other great people as well. So that was good fun. And as I said at the start, me and Maff, we've done 20th Century Geek. I've been on 3 episodes of that. Maff has been on one when we did the Reeve Roundup, and then also the Superman documentary. We've both been on Back to the Filmography quite a few times, and both of those are on any podcast feed that you want to check out. And I know, Maff, you're doing other stuff with 20th Century Geek in the future and all that kind of jazz. But is there final words you want to say before we wrap this up?
It's just been a pleasure to talk with you. I know it was only a few days ago we spoke with Scott, but yeah, it's we've actually had a bit of a break. We haven't spoken for a couple of weeks, I think it has. So it's been a bit weird.
At one point we were talking weekly, weren't we? Because of the amount of Clone Wars conversations.
But no, as I say, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having us on and being able to talk about something that's you reignited this.
Yeah, that's my goal. It's always the goal. Is once you and everyone listening, and everyone watching, thank you so much. But if you haven't delved into animation, watch Star Wars Rebels. It'll make Ahsoka make a lot more sense, and also it connects and intertwines with Andor. First season is a little bit slower, but it really picks up all the elements you liked about Andor. It's got so many of them in there. It's got a lot of the beats. It's not as mature, and it is animated. The animation style is a bit more cartoony, but it is worth it, especially as you get to the later series. And then from there, the world is your oyster. But again, comics has got some great stuff. Books have got great things. But anyone is free to contact me or comment. If you're on YouTube, just ask. Tell me what you like. I've read the vast majority of canon stuff, so I can tell you what to check out. I vetted it, and there's going to be plenty more content coming your way. But friends, thank you so much for tuning in for this Andor discussion again. We're going to be back next week for the Rogue One wrap-up, which is going to be good fun, which really is the finale of Andor. And then we all have to take a break from peak Star Wars for a little bit. But friends, thank you so much for listening. Please like, comment, subscribe, share, all that great stuff. It really helps the show out. Go to patreon.com/genuinechitchat if you want bonus content and to support the show financially. And also make sure you stick around because I'm going to be covering the Bristol Film Festival, the Forbidden Worlds Film Festival with Spider-Dan. And we're going to be doing episodes, I think almost all week in the last week of May. We're going to be tackling loads of films, including Aliens, Tremors, Battle Beyond the Stars, Orca, Alligator, loads of stuff, most of which I haven't seen. I have seen Aliens because that's ace. Young Sherlock Holmes, I released a video on Genuine Chit-Chat as well. So please check out those things and support us where you can. As there's nothing left to say except, may the Force be with you.
I'm with you.